Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in Season 2 Part 4 of What If the Transformers Crash Landed in Code Geass. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Knights and Wyverns. On one of the decks of Horai Island, just below the Ark, were two much smaller Cybertronian vessels, but no less impressive. One was the dark blue personnel vessel of Ultra Magnus known as the Ironwool, the other was the rebuilt jackhammer that Wheeljack was allowing his friends and comrades to borrow as the team of bots and BKs began to make their departure to the EU before saying their goodbyes. Good luck, to all of you. Optimus Prime said as he, Nunnally, Sayoko, Ratchet, Wheeljack, Ironhide, Ogi, Cornelia, Kagaya, Toto, and Shirley were seeing the others off. I could say the same to you. Lelouch said as he, Ultra Magnus, Colin, Suzaku, Sarah, Elita 1, Bumblebee, RC, Bulkhead, Smokescreen, Rai, Orpheus, Euphemia, Gino, Monica, Sideswipe, Prowl, Strongarm, and Jetfire were prepared to leave. We'll likely each have our own battles to face. Shirley and Kagaya shared a goodbye with Colin, Rai, and Suzaku, while Wheeljack did the same to Bulkhead before looking toward Elita 1. Anything happens to my ship again, I'm coming for you. Wheeljack teased to the female Autobot commander. I can't promise no scratches or anything. Elita replied. Good luck, Yuffie. Be safe. Cornelia shared a hug with her sister. You too, sister. Yuffie replied. We'll make sure to come back in one piece, promise. Gino smiled. Yeah, you can totally count on us. Smokescreen added. Bad guys won't know what hit em. Sideswipe also added, causing many of the present bots or BKs to wince slightly. Are you sure bringing these three with us is a good idea? RC whispered to Lelouch. They've proven they can hold their own, so it should be fine. Lelouch assured. We'll be certain to make contact once we've established dialogue with the EU political parties. Ultra Magnus informed. And we'll keep you guys in the loop with what happens in the Chinese Federation. Ogi put in. Just watch yourselves. Ratchet advised. The Decepticons may be in disarray at the moment, but that doesn't mean they're out of the picture. Understood. Prowl nodded. Come on, let's get this party going. Grindcore urged as he made his way to the ships. With that, everyone exchanged nods, handshakes, or hugs with one another as the team boarded their vessels. Ultra Magnus went to his vessel, the Ironwool, with Lelouch, Bumblebee, Colin, RC, Suzaku, Bulkhead, Rai, Smokescreen, and Sarah, while Elita 1 went to pilot the jackhammer with Sideswipe, Strongarm, Prowl, Orpheus, Gino, Euphemia and Monica inside. Jetfire, meanwhile, simply transformed into his own jet mode. Big brother. Lelouch heard Nunnally call to him as she looked with a sad smile. Come back, okay. Don't be gone too long. Lelouch smiled as he waved to his sister. I will, but you've got friends and family here. So you won't be too lonely. Love you. I love you too. She smiled as she watched him enter the vessel before it closed behind. With everyone inside, the Ironwool and Jackhammer both hovered in the air before turning around and flying off into the distance with Jetfire's jet mode right behind them. Nunnally couldn't stop herself from crying as she saw them fly away. These weren't so much tears of sorrow, but rather tears of joy. She was so proud of how much her brother has grown and knew that he was well on his way to making the world a better place, and she couldn't wait to see what it was. She felt a pair of hands on her shoulders as she looked up to see both Cornelia and Sayoko smiling in assurance, as well as glancing toward Optimus, who looked on with a nod himself. However, as Optimus gazed into the direction where his comrades had already vanished from sight, he couldn't help but recall his conversation with Lelouch and Sarah earlier. Flashback. You gave Leila a Geass? Lelouch questioned as he and Optimus looked in surprise. Well, sort of. Sarah tried to explain. This happened shortly after her parents died. Her father, as you know, was assassinated. Her mother tried to escape with Leila, but their car crashed. Her mother died there, but the girl survived and just ran. When I found her, she was drowning in a frozen lake. I pulled her out and offered her a contract. And she accepted it? Optimus asked. Not quite. Sarah replied. I only left the power inside her at the time, along with the option of whether or not she could use it. She was only a child so she wouldn't understand. Yet you gave one to Mao when he was a child. Lelouch pointed out, causing Sarah to wince. This happened after Mao, Sarah explained. I stayed with him and thought if I raised him, he would have a chance to help fulfill my end of the contract. When he was unable to, I left. And yes, that was cruel of me to do so. It was also one of the reasons I left the power with Leila before moving on. I felt she could be a possible contractor that I could fall back on if she chose to accept and use the power. But also, I didn't want to get her involved with the Geass order. So, they were in pursuit of you even then? Optimus asked. They never stopped, Sarah answered. I may have been a cynic at the time, but I wouldn't wish that on anyone, much less a little girl. What kind of power does she have? Lelouch asked. I'm not sure, Sarah replied. I haven't seen Leila in years since then, she might have even brushed it off as a dream. I can't say for certain whether or not she's used the power at all. All I do know is that if she doesn't use it by the time she reaches adulthood, the power will vanish. Maybe if I'm able to meet her and make contact, I might be able to determine what kind of power she has, if she doesn't already have it activated. Lelouch and Optimus exchanged glances with each other, not necessarily blaming Sarah for anything, but more understanding the possible complications that could arise from this. All three of them knew the risks and benefits of Geass all too well. End flashback. Present day, Paris. Congratulations, Leila. General Jean Smillis told the young woman standing in front of him in his office. Former Major, now Lieutenant Colonel officially installed as commander of the Assault Unit WZERO. The 40-chair defense committee approved it yesterday, all thanks to your Narva evacuation. Thank you, General, I accept. Leila responded as Smillis handed her the documents. I expect great things from you, Smillis said as he sat down at his desk. The WZERO unit was based on your proposal, so it's only fitting that you should be its commander. He noticed the expression on her face. What is wrong? You don't seem too happy about it. General Smillis, my attack plan 145A is to launch sneak attacks on enemy positions, utilizing multiple squads and nightmare forces. Leila began. So, it will require the commitment of a much larger number of troops, which is especially prevalent in our current time. Those Decepticons have wiped out the entire Britannian Empire. A superpower that has stood for hundreds of years, and they wiped it off the map in matter of months. How long before they direct their attention to the EU? My unit can use the same sneak attack methods to disorient their forces as well, but not as we stand, as I only have one soldier left in the WZERO. Please, let me expand the unit with European troops. Smillis gave a small sigh before replying. Leila, you are right to be concerned with these Decepticons. But that is exactly why the Joint Chief of Staffs won't allow Republic soldiers into your unit. But General, Leila tried to protest. As you say, the Decepticons have all but completely destroyed Britannia, which had more advanced weaponry and technology than either us or even the Chinese Federation. Smillis continued. What hope would we have if we were to engage in open war against them? Those in politics and government are only human, much like most people, they value their own lives above others. He commented in minor disgust. But we are not the only ones who would be fighting. Leila stated. We thought the Black Knights and the Autobots were wiped out more than 6 months ago as well when Britannia fell. But now they've returned. If we find a way to work with them, perhaps we can. Do you have a means of getting in contact with them? Smillis asked, causing Leila to look down in frustration, indicating she did not. If we were able to talk to the Black Knights and these Autobots, then perhaps we would give more thought to your proposal. But as it stands now, the best we can do is maintain our own borders. Euro-Britannia has been advancing even harder since the fall of their homeland, and we can't afford to fight 2 wars at the same time. I am sorry, Leila. I will fight for the United Republic of Europia. Leila stated. That will never change, but I can't help if I only have one soldier in my ranks. I'll try to talk with the committee, perhaps they may consider it out of a desperate times, desperate measures type scenario. Smillis said. But I can make no promises. Leila couldn't help but look in disappointment. Thank you, General. She turned around and was prepared to leave. You know, Leila, there is a formal party celebrating the successful Narva retreat. Smillis told her. With all this talk about the end of the world, perhaps it would do you good to wind back. Thank you, but I don't plan on it. Leila said, not in the mood before exiting the office. Right outside, past the pair of guards standing at the door, was her only surviving soldier, Akito, who had been waiting patiently. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Lieutenant Hyuga. It's all right, I'm on escort duty." Akito replied in a more straightforward tone. "That's what I'm here for." As they walked down the halls, he noticed the look on her face. "I'm assuming from your expression that I might be the only soldier of your unit for the time being." Leila sighed. "I can't stand politics. The world faces a grave threat, yet they seem more concerned with their own lives and careers than anything else." "That's just human nature," Akito said. "When it comes down to it, most people only care about themselves." Before she could even offer a chance at a rebuttal, she felt her communications device and answered it. "Hello. And how is your lovely trip in Paris, Leila?" She heard the laid-back tone of one of her officers over the other line. "Enjoying the pleasant weather. Claus, I'm afraid that I'm not in the mood for your games," Leila said as she pinched the bridge between her eyes. "That's fine, because we need you back at Castle Weisswolf. We have some special guests that would love to meet you. I'll make arrangements for a flight," Leila tried to say but was casually interrupted by her officer. "Actually Leila, they say they've got that covered." Before she could even ask what it was that he meant by that, both she and Akito looked in shock to see a large, neon green, and swirling portal open up right in front of them. "Just step into the glowing swirly portal and you'll find yourself on a magical journey," Claus told her over the communications before chuckling. "Just kidding, it'll bring you straight to Castle Weisswolf." Leila couldn't take her eyes off the portal that shined right in front of her, completely unable to make anything of it. She almost found herself entranced by it, up to the point she gave a startled gasp as Akito placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'll go in first and make sure it's safe. I'll contact you once I reach the other side, Commander," Akito told her before walking into the portal. "Wah, Akito." Leila tried to stop him, but he already vanished into the portal, much to her surprise and concern. A few seconds later however, and she heard his voice over the other side of the communications. "Commander, I made it to the other side with little issue other than some minor nausea," Akito informed in a military fashion, despite Leila being shocked and relieved at the sound of his voice. "That portal will indeed take you back to the castle, but Claus was right. There are certain individuals here that you need to meet." Though she was hesitant at first, Leila stepped into the portal, which closed shortly after. Leila soon found herself on the other side of the portal, and in the courtyard of Castle Weisswolf, before hunching over and holding her stomach and the nauseous feeling Akito warned her about. Leila. Anna Clement, Leila's childhood friend and scientist in the WZERO unit, ran to her side as she and Akito helped her stand on her feet. "I'm all right," Leila said as she swallowed a small amount of bile that made its way up her throat. She soon saw a bag being handed to her by Claus Warwick as he had a teasing grin. "You sure? Here's a bag if you need it." "I said I'm fine," Leila assured as she stood up. "I apologize for the surprise, Miss Malkle. But I felt it was urgent we meet." Leila turned around to a sight that made her gasp and pupils shrink. Standing before her was none other than the masked leader of the Black Knights, Zero himself. And standing alongside him was a group of 4 Black Knights and 11 Autobots. After overcoming her initial shock, Leila had introduced herself to Zero and his ensemble of Black Knights and Autobots. Currently, she, along with Anna and Claus, were sitting at a table in the courtyard with Zero sitting across from them, with Colin, Suzaku, Rai, and Orpheus sitting by his side as well. Akito was present as he stood at Leila's side like a soldier, and standing behind the Black Knights were Bumblebee, Ultra Magnus, and Elita 1. While they were in the midst of discussion, the other Autobots found themselves looking around the old castle, trying to get a vibe of the area, having a feeling they would be spending most of their stay in the EU here. "Huh, nice place," Bulkhead commented. "You sure?" Sideswipe commented, sounding rather unimpressed. "Seems like a rustic old mansion to me." "Of course, you'd think that." Strongarm glanced at the red Autobot with slight glare. "I personally find it to be rather charming. Yeah, kinda reminds me of the Hall of Records back on Cybertron." Smokescreen said. "Wonder if they got a library or something in there." "Never thought you'd be the type to read," RC said. "Well, Alpha Trion spent most of his time in the hall reading, so I picked up a few things myself." Smokescreen replied. When you're stuck in basically a large library, there's only so much you can do. Personally, I'd be interested in what kinds of nightmares or other forms of technology this unit has been developing. Jetfire said. Based on our intel, it's quite different from the EU's standard military protocol. To be expected, the WZERO is more or less a Black Ops unit, at least based on what we heard. Prowl said. My point is, even if it's less advanced than what we have on Horai Island, it could still be incredibly useful if we implement their tech with ours. Jetfire replied. Even their own battle tactics could open new doors for us. Strongarm agreed. That depends on whether or not they agree to work with us. RC said. They could still say, no. I don't see a reason why they wouldn't. Bulkhead replied. I mean, based on what we heard, this girl's supposed to be a humanitarian, so I'd say she'd fit in with us quite well. The WZERO maybe, but what about the rest of the EU? RC asked. Guess we're about to find out. Bulkhead said as they glanced toward the meeting taking place between the leaders of both sides. I have to say, it is rather ironic. Leila began as she spoke to Zero directly. Not too long ago, I was speaking with General Smillas about you, and the unfortunate circumstance that I was unable to get in contact with your organization. And yet, literally right after, I find you at the doorstep of my base. I suppose that is irony. Zero noted. But, let me just say that, I am honored to meet you Zero. Leila said with a smile. And you as well. She glanced up toward Bumblebee, Elita 1, as well as Ultra Magnus. For a long time, the Britannian Empire has been the spearhead for war and segregation in our world, and they showed no signs of stopping. And yet, when you first revealed yourselves to the world, challenging everything Britannia stood for, I couldn't help but find myself admiring you and what you were fighting for. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bumblebee played an Elvis recording through his radio. It's a pleasure to meet you as well, Commander Malkal. Zero replied. These are my subordinates, Colin Kazuki, Suzaku Kururugi, Rai Kururugi, and Orpheus Zevon. The Autobots present are Commanders Ultra Magnus and Elita 1, and the Scout Bumblebee. Claus chuckled. Bumblebee, huh. Well, that's cute. You got any honey for my tea? He teased, causing B to look at him with a little indifference. Nice to meet you all. Leila nodded. Sitting beside me is Officer Claus Warwick, Captain Anna Clement, and Lieutenant Akito Hyuga. Hello. Anna waved with a smile, while Akito simply nodded. So, what exactly have we done to earn the attention and audience of the people and robots who shook this world to its core? Claus asked casually. Hopping to recruit us to your cause. Actually, yes. Ultra Magnus nodded. But as well, we believe you may have a means for us to bring the EU over to our side. I'm sure you already understand at this point that your world is facing a force far worse than even the likes of Britannia. Elita 1 informed. The Decepticons, Leila said with narrowed eyes. Indeed. Zero confirmed. They've already destroyed the Britannian Empire. Suzaku said. It's only a matter of time before they set their sights on the rest of the world. We've got a small army with the Black Knights and what few Autobots who've arrived. Colin added. And we were able to hit the cons pretty hard in our last battle with them, but it won't stop them completely. If we're really going to stop the cons, we need to build a force that's even stronger than them. Rai commented. And the only force that can possibly reach that goal is no less than the entire world. So, you're trying to get the EU on your side. Well, what about the Chinese Federation? They got more territory than we do. Claus asked. We already have an informant who's rather close to the Empress. Orpheus revealed. And the rest of our forces, being led by Optimus Prime, are not only monitoring what's going on in the Federation, but even recruiting other small resistance groups across the world. Of course, simply repelling the Decepticons is not our only goal, but rather our immediate one. Zero said. What happens after the Decepticons are defeated is just as important. Right, cause once the big bad is out of the way, nasty politicians are gonna try to grab as much power as possible. Claus said. I can definitely see something like that happening. So let me guess, you want to create a future where everyone in the world is holding hands and shouting, Kumbaya, or something like that. Not quite how we'd put it, but yes. Elita said. You really think you can unite the world? Anna asked, sounding a bit unsure. Given the circumstances, it's the best chance this planet has at survival. Ultra Magnus replied. But yes, we do. Colin confirmed. The Black Knights aren't just Japanese, we got people coming in from all over the world. Heck, we even got a few former Britannian royals on our side. Rai commented. Huh, that's a surprise. Akito commented. And here I thought they were the absolute scum of the earth who did what they wanted and killed anyone who got in their way, even each other. Oh, several of them certainly were. Zero responded. The late emperor was among, if not the absolute worst human on the planet. But not everyone in the royal family was like that. Suzaku quickly said. Well, I do recall a certain princess wanting to make life better for those who were stuck in Area 11 more than 6 months ago. Akito said. And then turned into an absolute massacre. Euphemia had absolutely nothing to do with that. Suzaku shouted, standing up from his seat and slamming his hand on the table, catching several by surprise, save for his friends and comrades who looked to him with concern. She made a genuine attempt to help the people in need, only to get abducted and replaced with a machine that started that horrible mess. The Decepticons were responsible for that. Not Euphemia. We do have solid evidence to prove that, if you would like to see it for yourself. Alita offered in a calmer tone as Rai helped Suzaku sit back down. Oh, that's not necessary. If you say it's alright, then it's alright. Akito said in a tone that left many uncomfortable as Lelouch couldn't help but eye him with suspicion. There was something about Akito that left him more than a little concerned, not that he was about to kill them or anything, but something else. If you don't mind me asking, how many former Britannian royals do you have in your ranks? Leila asked, speaking more diplomatically. Euphemia is one of us. Orpheus said. As is Cornelia. The Witch of Britannia, EH. That's a surprise. Claus said. When your entire empire is wiped out, it tends to put things in a new perspective. Rai said. He cast a glance towards Zero, who nodded in approval before speaking. We also have Nunnally v Britannia among our ranks as well. That took the WZERO group by surprise. I heard she had died when Japan was first invaded. Anna commented. She was presumed deceased but was taken in by friends of their late mother and sheltered before joining with the Black Knights shortly before the Decepticon uprising against Britannia. Alita informed. I also recall that she wasn't the only one who was presumed deceased with Japan's invasion. Akito said. Didn't she have a brother? Indeed, she does. Zero said as he reached toward his mask before taking it off to reveal his face. Leila and Anna both gasped, even Akito's eyes widened, whereas Claus looked with a raised eyebrow. Lelouch v Britannia, former 11th prince and 17th heir to the now non-existent throne of Britannia, at your service. He performed a bow. You're a Britannian prince, Leila stuttered, not over her surprise. Former prince. Lelouch put extra emphasis on that. Even before the fall of Britannia, I've renounced my claim to that hallowed throne, and I do not regret my decision in the slightest. Huh, well I'll be damned. Claus commented. The revolutionary movement that started in Japan, being consisted mostly of Japanese, and here they are led by a former prince of the empire that persecuted them. Akito said before glancing toward Colin. Irony at its finest, wouldn't you agree? I know what you're going to say. Colin began. It's the height of hypocrisy, you're just a pawn to another Britannian royal, blah blah blah. Look, this guy here had every reason to hate Britannia as much as we do. He's earned our trust through sweat and blood and has done nothing to make that trust falter. And honestly at this point, that's not even the biggest surprise. She glanced up to the two Autobot commanders beside her. These guys are from another freaking planet. While I will say I'm proud to call myself Japanese, I'll still say that letting ourselves be blind by social and racial differences is pointless. Especially since the cons will wipe us all out despite our differences. Still, that is a rather bold move. Leila said, looking to Lelouch directly. To reveal your identity at our first meeting. I'm hoping that by doing so, I can earn your trust. Lelouch replied. Which is the main reason we hope to reach out to the EU's higher-ups through you specifically. Not just because of your connections, but your own familial history, Miss Breisgau. Leila's pupils shrunk as Anna and even Claus were caught off guard, while Akito merely looked to Leila with a raised eyebrow in surprise. How? The Black Knights were recently joined by an organization called Peace Mark, which I am from. Orpheus explained. "We've got connections all over the world, so it's only natural we find yours." A small smirk fell on his face. "And hey, you're not the only oddball here. I was part of a Britannian noble family that only had female successions, so I was basically disowned at birth. Not that it contributes to our main discussion, just saying. We've heard of your father." Suzaku got back to the point, speaking to Leila. Despite being Britannian, he went against the ways of the Empire and defected to Europia, where he was praised for his ideals. "And you have our condolences for your loss." Leila looked down slightly, remembering the explosions that claimed the lives of both her parents, as well as the screams all around her. "Thank you," Anna placed a hand on her friend's shoulder to comfort her. "We realize we may be asking much of you, but we're essentially backed into a corner and are running out of time." Alita once said. "The Decepticons are coming, and when they do, they will throw everything at the EU until there is nothing left." Are you also forgetting the fact that the EU is currently at war with Euro-Britannia?" Claus put in as he causally raised his hand. "I know it's all pretty minor in the grand scheme of things, but still. What if we're to convince Euro-Britannia to offer a ceasefire with the EU, and a possible alliance?" Lelouch offered, which caught them by surprise even further. "We are well aware of the current situation and your skirmish against Euro-Britannia." Ultra Magnus explained. "As we speak, Euphemia is meeting with Grand Duke Hyland to negotiate a possible ceasefire. But, we also know that there is a possibility the cons will try to force Euro-Britannia to cooperate with them, so if and when that happens, we can work with Hyland to organize a coup." Rai put in. "We try to look into the situation as much as we can before going in." Colin said. "It's better than just going in blind." "Huh, well damn." Claus smirked. "Gotta hand it to you, you think of everything." Lelouch couldn't help but smirk before getting serious as he looked toward Leila again. "I'm hoping that with this, we can begin to build the foundation of something for this planet. Not just a means to fight back against the Decepticons, but to build a world better than the old one. We'd be privileged if you would join us." He offered her his hand. Leila almost couldn't believe it. The masked revolutionary that she had come to admire since his first appearance in Japan and continued defiance against not only Britannia but also the Decepticons, was offering her a chance to join and fight alongside him and the Autobots that she had also admired. She could tell right away that unlike the Decepticons who seek to put every human on the planet under their heel, the Autobots and Black Knights worked and fought together as equals. Zero even went so far as to reveal his identity to her, hoping to extend trust. Perhaps a chance at world peace was possible after all. "I still have commitments to not only my unit the army," Leila said, trying to speak in a professional manner, despite her inner giddiness almost coming out to the surface. "So, I can't officially join the Black Knights." "I'm not asking you to," Lelouch said. "Just a chance for us to work together. If you are able and wish to join us, we'd be happy to have you on board. Otherwise, simply working together is fine. It's your choice." Leila smiled. "Well, in that case, I would be honored." She accepted his hand. "I look forward to working with you, all of you." She smiled to not only Colin, Rai, Suzaku, and Orpheus, but also, Ultra Magnus and Alita 1. Most all smiled in return, while Magnus simply nodded. With that all settled, Miss Breisgau, Lelouch began. "Please just call me Leila." "Very well, Leila, there is someone else I'd like you to meet." Lelouch led Leila through the woods that surrounded Weisswolf Castle alone. Akito insisted on coming along with her, but Lelouch assured him that he had no intentions of harming her. It wasn't until Leila ordered him to stay back that he allowed her to follow him. "I apologize for Akito," Leila said as Lelouch continued to lead her. "It's fine, I get it," Lelouch assured. "It's to be expected when you're asked to follow someone you just met all alone to a secluded area." "I suppose you're right," Leila replied. "But the fact you revealed your identity at only our first meeting shows that you are, above all, an honest man. So, I'm not worried." An honest man, huh? Lelouch silently noted the irony. Never once did he imagine that he'd be viewed as such. True, he knew how much he had changed since first meeting the Autobots in Shinjuku so long ago, but it still felt like a surprise to him to hear others say that. But it was a welcomed surprise as he smiled inwardly. "But if you don't mind me asking, why exactly are we meeting this person in such a secluded area?" Leila asked as they were further into the forest, having crossed a small river with little issue. It's not that she's shy or antisocial or anything, but the topic we're discussing isn't exactly one you talk about in casual conversation. Lelouch explained as they made their way to a large tree, where the person in question was waiting for them. Once Leila saw the flowing green hair and golden eyes, she could have sworn she felt her heart stop. "Hello Leila," Sarah greeted. "It's been a long time." Flashback. The young Leila struggled to pick herself up on the snowy ground as she glanced back to the burning and turned over car behind her where her mother still remained. "Leila. Mama. Run away, sweetie. Hurry," she told her as the flames consumed the car even further. With a heavy heart, she ran away, just before the car exploded, taking the life of her mother. Despite being so young, she knew that her mother was gone now, as was her father. She ran straight, her mind racing as tears flowed down her eyes. The bitter cold and icy wind biting against her face as she ran with no set destination in mind. That is until she ran onto a frozen lake, and the ice caved, causing her to fall into the freezing water. It almost seemed as if that death would claim her as well, just like her mother and father, until she spotted a figure in a hooded white robe above the frozen surface of the lake that she was trapped in. "Will you live?" The figure reached down and pulled her out of the lake. "You could if you possessed the power. I'll make a deal with you. If you accept my contract, then your life will be that unlike of any other humans, as long as you live in the same world as them. In another place, and another time." The figure stood up and removed her hood to reveal her long green hair and golden eyes. "The power of the king will set you apart. If you feel ready for it, I will grant that power." Said power manifested in the young Leila as the red sigil of Geass briefly shined in her left eye before vanishing. "Still, you are but a child. For that reason, I will give you till the time you reach adulthood to make a decision." She put her hood back on before turning around and leaving. "If you accept, there will be no turning back. If you refuse, it will cease to exist." End flashback. Sarah looked toward Leila as the young woman looked like she had seen a ghost, which caused Sarah to form something of a smile. "I'm glad to know you remember me," the immortal said, upon reading her facial expression. "I'd rather not have to bring up an awful memory for you if I could avoid it." She looked deep into Leila's eyes. "I can see the power still exists in you, but you haven't used it yet. Though, perhaps it has gone through a change because of that, so I am curious as to how it's developed." How? Leila couldn't get over the surprised look on her face as Lelouch took a few steps back, letting Leila sink this in on her own. Who are you?" "Back then, I was known as CC. But I would prefer you call me by my true name, Sarah." "You look the same when I saw you, all those years ago," Leila stuttered. "There's a reason for that, and it's the reason why Lelouch brought you here to see me," Sarah explained. "Geass," Leila remembered that word. "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "I will tell you everything I know about it now, including its connections and possible origins to that of the Cybertronian race." Euro-Britannian capital, St. Petersburg, Catherine Palace. Grand Duke Augusta Henry Highland, also known as Grand Duke Valens, entered in his own private quarters in exhaustion before sitting on the nearest chair to pinch the bridge between his eyes. Yet again, he had to deal with more and more nobles of the Britannian homeland that had escaped the fall of the Empire and had instantly demanded he take immediate action against the Decepticons. Of course, he had to deal with the EU forces that had sought to take advantage of the chaos and push back against his own territories, which led into the stalemate he found himself in against the enemy superpower. But that wasn't what made him truly exhausted. He knew it was only a matter of time before the Decepticons came knocking at his door. He suspected they would either seek to obliterate Euro-Britannia the way they did the homeland or force his people to submit to their will. In addition to Britannian nobility, he also had to see to the common citizens that had fled to Euro-Britannia, which was already causing a great deal of unrest with his own citizens. To say he felt like he was caught between a rock and a hard place was an understatement. But no matter how strong the forces of Euro-Britannia were, he suspected they wouldn't last long against the Decepticons, much like how the homeland didn't last 6 months before being completely erased. At this point, he had hoped a miracle would somehow come his way and provide an answer to work with. His thoughts were interrupted at the sight of a swirling portal that suddenly appeared before him. He stood up in alert, his hand on the nearest sword as he prepared himself for a fight, but he was not prepared for the three individuals that stepped out of the portal. Grand Duke Valens, Euphemia exclaimed with a smile as she, Gino and Monica entered the room before the groundbridge portal closed behind them. It's so good to see you after so long. P.R., Princess, Euphemia. He stuttered, never expecting to see her again, much less literally popping up in his own private quarters. Sorry for literally showing up out of nowhere, Gino said as he nervously rubbed the back of his head. Maybe you should sit down, sir, Monica said with a similar expression. Valens fell back on his chair as his mind caught up with everything. Soon, he smiled as he looked toward the familiar faces he had never thought he'd see again. I'm glad to see all of you. Princess Euphemia, Sir Weinberg, and Lady Kruszewski. There's no need for formalities, man, Gino told him in a friendly tone. As you can see, we're not exactly knights of the round anymore, and Euphy here doesn't consider herself royalty. The Grand Duke took notice of their attire, particularly the joint emblem of the Autobot Black Knight Alliance somewhere on each of their persons. You're Black Knights? Yes, we are, Monica confirmed. I'm sorry if you feel disappointed in that, Euphy began. But, despite what Britannia might have said about them, I know each and every one of them are good people. The Autobots, even before coming to Earth, truly fight for the freedoms and rights of all sentient beings, regardless of their origin. The Black Knights follow that ideal as well. I could no longer serve Britannia after seeing how far they're willing to go to strip those rights away. Honestly, I cannot say I'm surprised, Valens commented. You were one of the few individuals in the royal court that I could have a decent conversation with, without it going into all the details about making others submit. I may be Britannian, but that does not mean I approved of your father's methods. I know you didn't, and that's why we came here now, Euphy said. You know, your face has caused a lot of controversy with all the people here, Euphemia, Valens told her. What happened at the special zone in Area 11? Hey, that wasn't her, Gino tried to say, even though Euphy looked away with a shame-filled expression as Monica put a hand on her shoulder in comfort. The cons replaced her with a robot, and that turned the whole thing into a mess. It's their fault. It's all right, I believe you, Valens assured. I know you, Euphemia. You've never once picked up a gun in your life, and I know you wouldn't put so many innocent lives in danger, regardless of whether or not they aren't Britannians. Despite the guilt she still felt about the whole mess, she smiled at him. Thank you, sir. A small smile fell on his face in return before it faded slightly. Why do I have the feeling though, you didn't just drop by in order to catch up? The three got serious as Monica began. We believe the Decepticons are going to make their move regarding Euro-Britannia relatively soon. We've dealt a crippling blow to them in our most recent battle, but it's not going to stop them. We think they're gonna come to Euro-Britannia to try to recruit and or enslave you to their cause, Gino put in. Valens sighed. Yes, I figured that would happen sooner or later. I'm assuming you have a plan to counter this. Yes, Euphy confirmed. Zero and a few Autobots are in the EU right now, talking with someone who might be able to reach out to you and offer a ceasefire between them and Euro-Britannia, maybe even a truce. We're trying to bring the world together so that we stand a better chance at fighting the Decepticons, as well as creating a brighter future for Earth. Heck, we've even got some guys working in the Chinese Federation for the same reason, Gino added. It's pretty crazy, let me tell ya. The Grand Duke of Euro-Britannia couldn't help but chuckle. The world becoming united, and all it took was the invasion of potentially genocidal aliens to do it. Do you think maybe you can help us? Monica asked. If we were able to convince the EU to offer a truce and a ceasefire, would you be willing to accept it? As well as join the coalition of nations that we're building? Yes, Valens answered without hesitation as he stood up. As I said before, I may be a Britannian, but if there is a chance to end this fighting once and for all, I'll take it. Those monsters must be stopped, and I'll do what I can to help, even if I have to cooperate with the EU. Does that include Optimus Prime and Zero? Euphy asked. Those that were considered the worst enemies of the Empire. Britannia is all but gone, Valens responded. There may be some people here who won't be happy about it, but I can make it work. And yes, if I have to negotiate with those that were once considered Britannia's enemies, I will do it. Euphy shared an emotional smile with both Gino and Monica. Thank you, sir. She bowed her head. I'm so grateful to hear that. Please take this. Monica handed him a small communications device. When the Decepticons arrive, and things change here, please contact us. We'll keep you in the loop with what happens in the EU too. I understand. Villains nodded as he put the device away as he offered his hand for Euphemia to shake, which she did without hesitation. However, there is one thing you should know. Your sister, Maribel, is here. What? Euphy looked in surprise, as well as the two former knights of the round. As is her personal squad, the Glinda Knights. Villains informed. You know how ruthless Maribel was in regard to the Empire's enemies. But since Britannia's fall, she's taken it rather hard. And she will be the most difficult to convince to cooperate with you. Euphy had a conflicted look on her face. While she wasn't particularly close with Maribel, not nearly as close as she was with Cornelia, Lelouch, and Nunnally, she still cared for her. At the same time, she knew how ruthless and dangerous she was, even more so than Cornelia when she served Britannia. There was a part of her that hoped Maribel could join them, but if they had to fight, she would accept that as well. Thank you, I'll let everyone else know as well. Euphy nodded as she accessed communications. We're done here, please send a ground bridge. A second later, another portal opened, and Euphy turned to Villains one last time. I hope to see you again soon. As do I. Villains nodded as he watched the trio enter the portal before it closed completely. Meanwhile, there was an unfinished and abandoned city that appeared to be rather far out from the Europea capital of Paris. It seemed like it would be a busy metropolitan area, one that was incomplete if the construction equipment and unfinished buildings are anything to buy. However, the entire project seems to have been more or less abandoned for some reason, and the only inhabitants appeared to be a few homeless people here and there, as well as a small black market group that was currently making a deal in an abandoned subway station. I lost more than 100 people from my crew to get all that. The man who appeared to be the head of the group said toward a trio of Japanese teenagers that he appeared to be dealing with. Hope you're satisfied. The young man with brown hair and eyes looked toward a large Britannian transport vehicle that had a total of 20 Sutherlands installed. What about the other piece that we asked? Right here. The man snapped his fingers as one of his underlings brought out a large box, which he opened to reveal a large mechanical device akin to a computer hard drive of sorts. Yukiya, this what you're looking for? The leader of the trio asked as the other Japanese young man with light brown hair and green eyes apparently named Yukiya walked up to inspect the device himself. Yep, that's it, Ryo. Yukiya confirmed. I can get this hooked up to all the nightmares by tonight. Gotta tell ya, the fall of Britannia's been nothing short of good for business. The black market leader began as he sat casually with all his men standing behind him. While the metal giants are busy stomping on all the meatbag bugs on the surface, people like us have all the opportunity we could ask for. I'm sorry, but people like us. The girl with black hair and pink eyes questioned with a glare. You think we're the same? Easy Ayano. Ryo put a hand on her shoulder, while also sending a discreet nod to Yukiya, who pressed a small button on his watch, which began to count down from 30. Yeah, I mean we're all rats just trying to scrape by. The black market leader continued. But with the world in chaos, anything can happen. And you know the old saying, there's strength in numbers, right? So why don't you and your crew come and work for me? While all the metal giants and big empires duke it out, we can help ourselves to all the spoils they leave behind and even make our own underground empire. We may be rights, but we'd live like kings. So what do you say? Ryo actually chuckled. Ya know, that's actually not a bad offer, except for one thing. He scowled at the man. You make me sick. What was that? Ryo. Now. Yukiya warned as he jumped over the steel girders behind him for cover, while Ryo and Ayano did the same behind the nightmare transport when suddenly, the entire area had been lit up with explosions from bombs that the trio had planted earlier. The explosions appeared to be coming in from all directions as all the armed men were blown to smithereens, even those that tried to make their escape were blown up by motion sensor bombs at the exit. The smoke and dust began to clear as everyone appeared to be dead, save for Ryo, Yukiya, and Ayano as they pulled themselves out of the cover to survey the damage. Wow, Yukiya smirked at his handiwork. Body parts everywhere. Man, what a mess. Ryo said. It'll be a bitch to clean up. Good work, but it won't always be this easy. It certainly won't be easy if we end up dealing with the cons. Come on man, you heard him. Yukiya said causally. We're just meatbag bugs, it's not like they're gonna notice us even if they're standing right in front of us. Guess that's the difference between us and them. Ayano commented. They're practically indestructible, and we're so fragile. Somebody please. They heard the pained grunts of the black market leader, who still appeared to be alive, even though he suffered several severe injuries, including a lost right leg. I need a doctor, it's over, just help me. Well, you're still alive, huh? Ryo said as he walked over to him. You've gotta help me. Sure, I'll be happy to help you. Ryo smirked. For a small fee, I mean your life isn't worth much. Give me a ballpark estimate. He laughed at his own joke. Wait, don't tell me. Are you kids with those rebels, those guys who joined those other metal giants? The Black Knights. Nope, we're not with them, just a bunch of 11s trying to get by in this batshit crazy world. Ryo answered before pulling out a pistol and aiming it at the man. But you don't need to worry about it. He put the man out of his misery with a shot to the head. Paris, the next day. Leila was able to successfully arrange a meeting between General Jean Smillas and Zero, under a few conditions. The meeting would take place in the form of a convoy between the European capital and Castle Weisswolf, in order to give off the impression that Leila was being escorted back home. Smillas felt it would be best if the politics and bureaucrats did not know about the presence of the Autobots and Black Knights in the EU at this time, which both Zero and Ultra Magnus found to be acceptable. The second condition was that if any other Black Knights were present, they could not have their nightmares. It was a diplomatic meeting, nothing more than that, and Smillas felt it would be unnecessary if they had Autobot escorts, which was indeed the case. Currently, Zero and Suzaku both sat in the limousine with Leila and Smillas that made its way through Paris with a military convoy around them. Driving with the convoy were the vehicle modes of the Autobots Ultra Magnus, Elita 1, Bumblebee, RC, Bulkhead, and Prowl. Colin, Orpheus, and Rai were also present, but they stayed with RC, Prowl, and Bulkhead respectively. Akito was also present, but he sat in the cockpit of one of the Nightmares being transported with the convoy. At the same time, Jetfire, Smokescreen, Grindcore, Strongarm, and Sideswipe stayed at Castle Weisswolf alongside Sarah, Euphemia, Gino, and Monica as they got to know the officers and staff within the WZERO unit. Sarah and Lelouch had also expressed to Leila that both Chera's existence, as well as that of the Geass, was to be kept an absolute secret from even General Smillas. She hadn't even told Akito or the rest of her unit about it. While she didn't like the idea of keeping secrets from those closest to her, she saw the reason why when Sarah and Lelouch explained to her everything about it. From Lelouch's own Geass power, as well as that belonging to Rai and Orpheus, as well as the Prime Geass belonging to Optimus, and even VV, the Geass order that was being controlled directly by the late Emperor Charles, and even Megatron's own Dark Geass, and the possible origins to Unicron. Leila felt it was a little overwhelming at first once she heard it all, but agreed on the necessity to keep it secret for the time being. The convoy made its way through the streets of Paris, passing by the ruins of Notre Dame as the meeting went underway. I can't help but note the irony. Smillas began. Just yesterday, Leila had expressed the urge of working with your organization, yet we had no way of contacting you. And yet you were able to come to us. Leila herself noted the irony. Zero answered, causing Leila to stifle a chuckle before sitting straight. So, shall we get started? Yes. Smillas nodded. While I do agree that the human race has a better chance at survival against the Decepticons by working together, and I do see the possibility of that happening as this Megatron has given the humanity a common enemy to stand against, there are two critical things that have to be taken into account. The fear that the Decepticons instill, as well as what happens after they are defeated. Zero said. Correct. If nothing else, you appear to think ahead, Zero. Smillas granted. We're at war, it's crucial to think of the consequences of one's actions. Both good and bad, Suzaku commented. I agree, Smillas replied. So, tell me, what kind of world do you envision creating once the Decepticons have been dealt with? What sort of society would you make? Currently, we are working with certain groups and individuals who would help to create a charter of nations. Zero explained. This charter would include larger superpowers, such as the EU and the Chinese Federation, as well as smaller and independent nations. Here, the leaders of each nation would speak together as equals. A charter, you say? I never quite pegged you as an idealist. Smillis said. Take a look at the world we're in now, General Smillis. The people could use some idealism. Zero told him. Perhaps you may be right. Smillis glanced out the window. You know, ever since the revolution 300 years ago, Europea has maintained its republic system. But what the revolution might have actually given rise to, is this devastating money worship. The end result of a lifetime of self-interest. That's true for even those who claim to be this country's leaders. Even with the shadow of the Decepticons looming over them, those in power seem more content with retaining what power and money they have, rather than the people they should be protecting. If this keeps up, the Decepticons will wipe out the EU even more swiftly than they did Britannia. Suzaku, Zero, and even Leila seemed to silently agree. One look at the EU's politics and they could tell that they seemed more concerned with themselves at the moment. Which is why we are speaking to you, General. Suzaku said. You are one of the most well-decorated soldiers in this superpower, more people are willing to listen to you. If the people of the EU follow you, and as if you choose to work with us, this country might stand a better chance. I feel you give me too much credit, Mr. Kururugi. Smillis glanced at him directly. But if I may ask, why did you side with Britannia before? You may be a Black Knight now, but people still remember you as a soldier of the Britannian Empire, even a knight to Princess Euphemia. I thought I could work within the system to change it. Suzaku answered, though he would keep the reason for atonement of his father's murder a secret for obvious reasons. With her optimism and humanitarian goals, I felt that Princess Euphemia had the ability to do just that. Perhaps she did have the ability, but even if the Decepticons didn't turn against Britannia themselves, I feel that the Emperor would have simply turned all of Britannia against your princess in order to maintain the status quo. Smillis commented. That's not pessimism speaking, it just seems to be the nature of those with power. Which is why I can't help but think, if only General Napoleon Bonaparte, hero of the revolution, had become Emperor of Europe, rather than dying at the guillotine like he did. He tried to make himself a dictator. Leila said. I'll have to agree. Zero added. Napoleon was a competent strategist and a great military leader, and I have respect for his tactics. I cannot condone his desired result of making himself the sole ruler of an entire continent, to rule with an iron fist like that of a Britannian emperor. The dictatorship of one talented man is far more beneficial than the democracy of the ignorant masses. Smillis argued. Then wouldn't it make more sense to teach the people? Suzaku asked. From what I've learned, the leaders don't make the country, it's the people they are supposed to serve. Kings, presidents, even emperors are supposed to serve the people, not the other way around. Unfortunately, not everyone feels that way. Smillis replied. Zero gave a small sigh before speaking. General Smillis, do you know how the Decepticons came to be? Please enlighten me. Smillis encouraged. Cybertron, long ago, was once divided into a caste system. Zero began. Those of the higher class had more power and looked down upon the lower classes, creating an inequality among the masses. Sound familiar? Two Cybertronians sought to change it. One was librarian named Orion Pax who was mentored by a previous leader of Cybertron, the other was a gladiator who worked his way up from the bottom to get where he wanted to be, his name was Megatron. Orion and Megatron approached the Cybertronian High Council, the party that would select those who would lead Cybertron, known as the Primes, and proposed their vision for a new society. Much like Napoleon, Megatron wasn't as a tactical genius, he's outwitted myself more than once. He's also a brutal warrior, taking pride in his years as a gladiator. For his genius, strength, and cunning, he developed a strong sense of charisma which gained a loyal following. His vision for a new society on Cybertron was to overthrow the old guard with force as he demanded to be named the next Prime. Smillis remained silent as he allowed Zero to continue, listening to every word, as did Leila who narrowed her own eyes at Megatron's tactics, particularly how he demanded to become the next leader. It left quite a bad taste in her mouth. However, Orion proposed a more peaceful method to bring a new golden age to Cybertron. Zero continued. The High Council was so moved that they decided then and there to make Orion the next leader. And he would have led Cybertron into a new era of peace and prosperity. But Megatron didn't like that. He wanted all the power for himself, so much so that he waged open war on all who opposed him through his growing army of followers, which he named Decepticons. The end result of the war. Cybertron is now a husk, unable to sustain any form of life, and they have every intention of doing the same to Earth. They will drain our world dry until there is nothing left. General, you said how you felt the late Britannian Emperor would turn against Euphemia for challenging his views, and I do see that happening. Suzaku began, which is why I also have a feeling that if Britannia continued along their set path, even without the intervention of the Decepticons or even the Autobots to stand against them, they would have destroyed the Earth too, just as Megatron destroyed Cybertron. And I feel that Napoleon, or one of his successors, might have done the same if Europia had become an empire like Britannia. Zero continued. True, those in power have made this country less than perfect, but it's not the power or the system itself that's the issue, it's the people in charge. Power can be corruptive, yes, but it's not truly evil nor is it truly good, it's up to the people who wield that power to make it so. And I have seen that those with a great deal of power and strength use it to protect the weak. Optimus Prime is capable of just that, as is Euphemia, and I believe there are those in this world that also have the capability to do so as well. And you can do that too, General. Suzaku said. Even though those in politics might have more political power, you're someone the people can get behind. If you follow a similar example, maybe the people can strive to make this nation better. Unlike Britannia, there is still hope the EU can be changed. I admire and respect your idealism. Smillas replied. And your friends have my sympathies for the loss of their home. He glanced out the window to gaze at the vehicle mode of Bumblebee that stuck close to the limousine. But it's not exactly an easy process. However, while Smillas seemed somewhat skeptical, Leila couldn't help but look to Zero and Suzaku in awe, doing her to maintain a professional disposition. From the beginning, she knew what the Black Knights and the Autobots stood for, but to actually hear them say it, she could tell right away that they had every intention of making their dream a reality. Is Optimus Prime like this as well? She had hoped she would meet him soon, as well. If she could help them in creating a better world than the one that they currently have, she would help with every fiber of her being. Soon, the convoy passed over a bridge that left the innermost city of Paris, before passing by the internment camps that contained a large number of Japanese refugees. Seeing all these people behind caged walls made every Black Knight and Autobot wince. Colin and Rye, and even Orpheus, RC, Bumblebee, Bulkhead, even Prowl looked disturbed, especially Elita 1. Even Ultra Magnus couldn't help but look in sympathy to the starving people. For many of them, this reminded them too much of the ghettos back in Area 11 under Britannian subjugation. Why are there internment camps here? Suzaku couldn't help but question. Prejudice against the Japanese, against all non-Britannians is a Britannian policy, and Britannia doesn't exist anymore. While that is true, it was the decision of the politics when Japanese refugees entered our borders. Smillas replied. They feared Britannia would attack if we offered them sanctuary. Now that fear has grown even more with the Decepticons. After all, the Black Knights originated from Japan and you and the Autobots are the only ones who are directly fighting them. Leila and Suzaku looked in sympathy out the window at the sight of the people locked away, while Zero's fists clenched under his cape. He would totally see Britannia attacking the EU just for offering sanctuary, and the same for the Decepticons as well. Outside, Colin's hands clenched hard on RC's handles. Take it easy, Colin. RC told her partner, even though she felt the same thing she did. I know, still pisses me off though. Colin muttered. Ya know, a part of me wants to just call up a ground bridge right here and now and get these people to Horai Island. Rice said over the communications he, his friends, and the Autobots shared so they wouldn't disturb the meeting. I hear ya, buddy. At least there they'd be safer. Bulkhead agreed. We cannot do that, however. Ultra Magnus commented. If we did, it would compromise our negotiations with the EU, which we cannot afford. Magnus is right. Orpheus agreed. Look, I understand how you guys feel. I may be a Britannian, but I was once in these people's shoes as well. Being stuck in alone with no help, it's torture on the inside. But we can't help them by blowing stuff up or anything like that. Elita 1 also said. Unlike with Britannia, we have a chance to negotiate with the EU, and a chance to help these people that doesn't involve fighting. I agree, Prowl said. We need to take this one step at a time. But I promise, we will help these people. Magnus vowed. You have my word as an Autobot. Yeah, Colin breathed a little easier now. However, her Autobot partner noticed how their party's scout had remained silent. You've been awfully quiet, B. Something on your mind? RC asked. Yeah, it's Akito. Bumblebee said, causing everyone to look in the direction of a nightmare transport where Akito was located, sitting in the cockpit of a nightmare. There's just something about him. I can't quite explain it, but something in his eyes, it's different than most other people we've seen. Yeah, I noticed it too. Colin agreed. Like there's something missing inside him, something that's dead. Rai finished. Like he's dead inside. Yeah, I've seen that look before, on Lelouch at the beginning, and even myself. After a few hours, the convoy began to pass through a certain abandoned city, making their way straight through on the main express routes that crisscrossed their way throughout the massive infrastructure, unaware that they were being watched. Whether it was a slight shift in his speed or something else, Orpheus sensed the Autobot he rode in was feeling a slight unease. Prowl. Be on guard. Prowl warned the group over the comms. I've got a bad feeling. You sure you're not just getting a weird vibe from this creepy city? Rai asked somewhat skeptically. Well, I'm getting a haunted vibe from here. Bulkhead pointed out. Prowl's instincts are usually spot on. Ultra Magnus said with a serious tone of voice. Keep your guard up, prepare for a possible ambush. Target sighted, right on time, Yukiya said as he monitored the convoy from an unseen position. That's weird, got a few civilian vehicles passing through. Probably just cover for the military. Ryo said over the communications. Then why did they have military vehicles with them? Ayano questioned. I think we should pull out, I don't like this. No, we may never get another chance like this. We're taking it, Ryo stated. Alright then, let's get this game started. Yukiya smirked wildly. The convoy continued to make their way through the central road before coming to a certain point where a series of bombs went off at the struts of the road, causing the path in front of the convoy to cave in, taking down the front escort military vehicles, but the Autobots quickly put the brakes on their respective vehicle modes, jostling some of their human occupants before rolling back toward the limousine that still had Zero, Suzaku, Leila, and Smillas. Likewise, the nightmare transports had to skid to a halt, while the one Akito was in accidentally smashed into a military vehicle before crashing into the side of the road. Sensing he was needed outside, Akito activated the cockpit of the guardmare he was currently in and tried to open it. The EU-grade nightmare was fully functional, save for one small problem. Damn, the hatch is stuck, Akito cursed. What's going on? Zero questioned. Ambush, Elita 1 exclaimed. Autobots, be ready. Do not transform yet. I repeat, do not transform yet. Zero ordered. Form a perimeter and see who's attacking us first. Roger. All present Black Knights and Autobots responded. Driver, pull us back 20 meters. Let the Autobots encircle us. Zero ordered. Why, yes sir. The panicked driver did as he was told as he pulled the limousine back and allowed the vehicle modes of Ultra Magnus, Bumblebee, RC, Bulkhead, Prowl, and Elita 1 to form a complete circle around them, with Colin, Rai, and Orpheus reaching for their guns and keeping eyes out for the enemy. You two, stay as close to us as possible. Suzaku told Leila and Smillas, as they both nodded in understanding. Movement. 20 units encircling us. Ultra Magnus reported from his built-in radio. Decepticons. Elita questioned. Negative. They appear to be Britannian signals. Magnus replied, just as 20 Sutherlands all shot out from the buildings surrounding the group. All nightmares except one were being remotely controlled by Yukiya from his hiding spot using the equipment he and his friends got yesterday. Ryo, piloting only a single Sutherland, appeared from behind and already fired the Sutherland's rifle at the guardmare that just unloaded from one transport to obliterate it. This is too easy. Come on, show us what you got. Autobots, attack. Magnus ordered as he and the other Autobots transformed and returned fire with their Energon blasters, already taking down 6 Sutherlands before the puppeteer pulled the others back at a distance. What? Are you freaking kidding me? Ryo exclaimed in shock. Hold on, are those Decepticons? Ayano practically screamed over the communications as the shocked Yukiya saw it all through his screen. But he wasn't too shocked to notice the emblem on Magnus' shoulder. No, different symbol. Looks like they're the Autobots we've heard about, Yukiya said. That's it. We're pulling out now, Ayano exclaimed. No, it's too late to go back. Ryo ordered. Yukiya, you and I will distract the big guys. Ayano, grab the target. Alright, let's see what these guys can do. Yukiya controlled his nightmares as they fell back to the buildings around them to shoot at the Autobots and keep up suppressor fire. The Autobots returned fire while keeping a perimeter around the limousine, with Colin, Rai, and Orpheus each pulling out what appeared to be a miniature gun, which suddenly transformed into a something as big as an automatic rifle of Cybertronian design as they stuck closest to the limousine underneath the Autobots. I'm looking at around 14 targets remaining. RC reported. Maintain perimeter. Magnus ordered. Negative, split off. Zero countered, catching most of them by surprise. Hold on, what? Bulkhead questioned. And you leave you guys open? Yes, Zero stated. They're not here to destroy us. This is an attempted kidnapping of at least one or two high-value targets. He looked toward Smillas and Leila, with 8 or 1 or both likely being the target. We're going to lure them in. Autobots, fan out and take out the Sutherlands. Prowl, search the perimeter for anyone else, just in case. Colin, Rai, Orpheus, help the military personnel that are still alive. Suzaku, stay here with me, help watch over Leila and Smillas. Roger. Everyone except Alita and Magnus replied. The former looked toward the latter, who nodded in understanding, seeing the tactical brilliance of that plan. You heard him. Move out. Alita ordered as the Autobots went off in separate directions toward where the remaining Sutherlands were hiding, all except Prowl, who swiftly jumped over the bridge and landed underneath it before activating his cloak to begin his recon. RC transformed into her motorcycle form as she drove off the road and into one ruined building where 2 Sutherlands were located before transforming in midair and using her arm blades to swiftly decapitate both right before landing. She quickly ran toward one of them and pried open the cockpit only to discover it was empty, save for the crisscrossed wires everywhere. They're empty. There's no one inside, RC reported. Well, looks like we're busted, Yukiya said as he saw RC's face through the screen. They're spreading out. Ryo kept his Sutherland a bit further behind as he shot toward the military transports to keep them pinned, even as Colin, Orpheus, and Rai helped the surviving soldiers and drivers find cover behind the transports. Move now, Ayano. The young girl swiftly jumped up from behind the railing and made her way over to the limousine with a grenade in hand. However, she was surprised for the door on the side to be kicked open as Suzaku shot out and delivered an airborne spinning kick to knock her back before rolling on the ground, keeping a firm hood on her grenade, and making sure the pin was still intact. She glared at Suzaku and was ready to draw her kodachi. I'd advise you to surrender. Her pupils shrunk as she saw the armored figure standing alongside Suzaku, protecting the military officials inside the vehicle. Though the armor was different, she would never mistake the mask that was known all over the world. No freaking way. Zero held out his right arm as the armor shifted to reveal a glowing blue blade attached to the armor, which was enough to snap Ayano out of her stupor and jump back down over the railing and below the bridge. Suzaku, capture her. But be careful. We don't know what she can do. Zero ordered. Understood. Suzaku leapt over the railing in pursuit. You two, stay with me. Zero told Smillas and Leila as they stepped out of the vehicle. Meanwhile, Bumblebee slid into one building where 2 remote-controlled Sutherlands fired their Harkins at him. He ducked and rolled to deliver a kick to knock one Sutherland down before delivering a powerful punch to knock down the second. He then produced his Energon blasters to obliterate the unmanned cockpits and disable them. Bulkhead appeared before 3 remote Sutherlands as they also fired their Harkins at him, but he allowed it to happen as they barely scratched against his armored hide before forming his dual maces and rushing them. They tried to pull back, but Bulkhead was already on them as he brought down his right mace to completely obliterate the center one, swung his left mace to destroy the second and sandwiched the third in between both his weapons and leave almost nothing left of the upper half. Alita 1 fired a precise shot to take off the head of one of the Sutherlands she was facing, leaving only 2 as they tried to retreat, but she quickly transformed and gave pursuit, easily catching up with them inside the building before transforming and leaping to grab hold of a support beam on the ceiling and thrust her feet out for a kick to destroy the head off one Sutherland. She then leapt to the ground and delivered a hand thrust to knock the final one down before swiping her hands in the form of chop to decapitate it. Ultra Magnus had begun to barrel through the gunfire of 3 Sutherlands shooting at him before appearing before one to deliver a powerful uppercut to send it crashing through the ceiling of the building they were in. He then grabbed the second by the leg before bringing his arm down to crush and separate the leg while using it as a makeshift weapon to pummel the third before using it to crush the Sutherland from which it came from. Damn, that leaves all except Ryo. Yukiya scowled as he saw all his remote-controlled Sutherlands being taken offline. However, he noticed something from their camera feed. He didn't know much about the Autobots' features, they were moving too fast, but he recognized the colors from when they first appeared. And during this, he only saw the 2 blue ones, along with the pink, yellow, and green ones. But where's the white one? Suddenly, a bladed shuriken was shined in front of his face as Prowl appeared out of nowhere, directly in front of him. Right here. Yukiya desperately reached for a switch to a set of bombs he wired to himself, only to find the switch had been severed. I just severed it, Prowl revealed. How in the hell, someone as big as you, something so small? Yukiya stuttered. Prowl smirked. Proper training. Underneath the bridge, Suzaku kept his eyes out for Ayano as he searched, keeping his guard up all the same as he knew she had a grenade, but that was the only weapon he saw on hand. Who knows if she had any other weapons he didn't see, or if she had backup down here. Ayano however hid behind a support beam, 7 feet from Suzaku's spot. She scowled before pulling the pin on her grenade and throwing it in his direction. However, Suzaku heard the noise of the pin being pulled and quickly grabbed a rock to throw it in the direction he heard the sound, striking the grenade and sending it away where it exploded without hurting anyone. However, this also worked in Ayano's favor as she used this opportunity to make a break for it. Damn it all, this whole operation has gone to shit. Ryo cursed before his Sutherland shook, its right gun arm being blown off by gunfire from Colin, Rai, and Orpheus. He pulled back to gain some distance, almost on instinct. What kinds of guns are those? Rai smirked as he held his rifle in his hand. High-heat magnesium rounds. They used to be just for our nightmares to fight evenly with the cons, but now they're handheld. Not to mention they can transform into something that looks like pistols and we don't have to lug them around. Colin smirked as well. God, I love Cybertronian tech. Heads up. He's coming back. Orpheus warned, just as Ryo shot his Sutherland forward at such speed, that they were unable to shoot back and tried their best to find cover as Ryo shot his Sutherland's built-in gun, gunning down a few unfortunate EU soldiers. Lelouch scowled underneath his mask as he saw the situation his friends were in. Damn it. Go, help them, Leila told him. I'm not going to leave you open. Zero quickly said. Your soldiers need your help. We can handle ourselves. Go, Leila told him. Though he didn't like the idea of leaving the people he was supposed to be protecting open, even if it was for a short time, he knew Leila was right. He had to disable that Sutherland before anything happened to his friends. With that, his armor's feet activated some form of hover skate feature, with a faint blue glow that allowed him to shoot at twice his normal speed straight for the Sutherland. Ryo noticed the incoming individual and his screen zoomed in on the target. Holy, is that Zero? Suddenly, one of the nightmare transports was shot open, catching Ryo's attention, as well as that of Zero, Rai, Colin, Orpheus, and even Leila and Smilla's. A guardmare, which happened to be piloted by Aikido, leapt out from the vehicle, landing by the surprised Zero. I'll go from the left, you take the right, Aikido stated. Surprised at first, Lelouch quickly got over it before nodding and zooming in the direction Aikido said to take as the guardmare went in the opposite, both gunning straight for the Sutherland. Seeing the nightmare as the largest threat, Ryo fired his Sutherland's remaining guns and slash Harkins to tear the nightmare to pieces, which happened just as Aikido leapt back from the cockpit to run forward, using his gathered momentum, and the now abandoned guardmare as a shield to cover himself as he advanced forward with a grenade launcher in hand. However, this also left Ryo open as Zero came in from his blind spot, a boost of energy coming in from his hover feet to allow him to leap to equal height of the Sutherland. Ryo only just noticed him in time to see Zero's armor reveal a set of short blue energon blades from his arms, which he used to cut down the gun on the cockpit before slicing off the remaining arm on the Sutherland as he fell before a small gust halted his descent just before making contact with the ground. Akito was left to deliver the finishing move as he slid directly under the Sutherland's legs and fired his grenade launcher just below the cockpit to disable the Sutherland permanently. "Whoa," Colin muttered as she, Rai, and even Orpheus looked nothing short of surprised. "He's good," Rai stated. "Not bad." Orpheus smirked with a nod. "You're quite the soldier, aren't you, Akito?" Zero commented as he and Akito stood before the disabled Sutherland. "And I see that armor isn't just for show," Akito replied. "Designed by one of Cybertron's greatest minds." Zero replied, silently thanking Perceptor for this gift. "That and the hellish physical training from Sayoko and Toto I've endured for 6 months has certainly helped. But it would seem Akito here could give either of them a run for their money." Leila breathed a sigh of relief, seeing how the fighting had come to an end. However, she did not appear to notice Ayano leaping back onto the bridge, just behind Smillis to strike the back of her Kodachi into the back of his neck to knock him unconscious, which drew Leila's attention as Ayano made her way toward her. "We were just here for the old man. But if we can take her hostage," Ayano thought just as Suzaku appeared behind her, ready to grab her. However, Leila thrusted both her hands to block Ayano by her knuckles and swiftly grabbed her by the wrist and threw her over her shoulder toward the ground, causing her to drop the weapon, which Suzaku quickly grabbed as Leila pulled Ayano up and kept her arms pinned behind her back. "Leila, you okay?" Rai asked as he quickly made his way toward her just as Ultra Magnus, Bumblebee, Alita, RC, and Bulkhead arrived back on the scene. "I'm fine, but what about General Smillis?" "He's alright. Just unconscious," Orpheus said as he and Colin checked on the general. Prowl had also walked onto the scene, keeping a firm hold on Yukiya in his hand. "I found the one controlling the nightmares remotely," Prowler reported. "Yukiya," Ayano exclaimed as Leila kept a firm hold on her. "Sorry Ayano, got busted." Yukiya shrugged, acting rather causal for someone who just got captured. "Was there anyone else?" RC asked. "No, just these three it would seem," Prowl answered. Bulkhead got a good look at both Yukiya and Ayano. "They're kids." Ultra Magnus and Bumblebee made their way closer toward Akito and Zero, before standing in front of the Sutherland as the Autobot commander aimed his ion cannon at the cockpit. "Pilot, exit the nightmare now. All your associates have been captured, and your weapons are disabled. You have nowhere to go," Magnus told him. "All right, just don't hurt them. I'm coming out." The cockpit opened to reveal Ryo, who kept his hands raised before eyeing the masked revolutionary. He then chuckled. "Care to explain what you find so funny?" Zero questioned. "You," Ryo said. "The guys we bought this from thought we were Black Knights, but here we are faced with their leader and alien robots. It's funny in an ironic sort of way." "Akito, stand back," Zero said, causing Akito to take a few steps back as Zero walked closer toward him. A slit in his mask opened up to reveal the Geass emblem in both his eyes. "You will tell me everything I need to know." Ryo gasped as the sigil flew into his eyes, his brainwave patterns rewritten, and a red ring formed in each of his eyes. "Sure thing. What do you want?" Akito eyed Zero with some suspicion. He wasn't sure, but just now, he felt an odd sensation coming from him. It was a sensation that felt oddly familiar, and though it wasn't as twisted as the last time he felt something like this, it didn't make feel any less uncomfortable. "Who are you?" Zero began. "My name is Ryo Sayama." "And your associates?" Zero asked once more. "The girl is Ayano Kasaka, and the guy is Yukiya Naruse." "Is there anyone else you're working with?" Zero continued. "No, it's just the three of us." "Are you working for someone?" "No. What was your objective here?" "We were trying to capture General Smillis." "Why?" "We were planning to offer him in exchange for nightmares. Even though you already had 20. We were going to ask for more advanced nightmares." "Why?" "So, we can fight against the Decepticons if they attack us." "You want to fight the Decepticons?" Zero asked in minor surprise as the other Autobots and Black Knights looked in surprise, along with Leila. "No, but we think they'll attack the EU soon. At least this way we can defend ourselves from them and retreat." Ryo replied, still under Lelouch's Geass. This was all about nightmares. Leila asked aloud before a serious expression formed on her face. Suzaku, please take hold of her. She requested, referring to Ayano. Suzaku nodded as he grabbed Ayano's hands and kept them pinned, allowing Leila to quickly step toward Zero, with Akito, Magnus, and Bumblebee still present as well. She stepped close to Zero and spoke in a whisper. Turn off your Geass. I want to speak to him of his own accord. I can still get the truth out of him like this. Zero whispered back. I know, but I want to hear him say it, not forced out of him. Please, Leila requested. He gave a sigh before doing it. As you wish. He turned off his Geass, causing the ring in Ryo's eyes to vanish. He gave a slight gasp. Even though she spoke in a whisper, Akito was still able to hear the unfamiliar word spoken by his commander. Geass. But he chose not to say anything as he deemed it unimportant at the moment. What just? You said you had plans to fight the Decepticons. Leila told him. What? When did I say that? Just now. You literally told them practically everything. Ayano shouted at him, causing Ryo to look in confusion. For what reason would you seek to fight the Decepticons? Magnus asked. Are you planning to wage war with them? Wage war with the guys who wiped freaking Britannia. Ryo replied. We're crazy, but we're not that crazy. If you guys wanna fight them, go ahead. We won't stop you. Heck, we'll be happy if you guys, by some miracle, manage to take them down. Yeah, you guys wanna play revolutionary, go ahead. Yukiya also spoke out. We just want to survive. Blend in with everyone else. You mean with the slave labor force? Colin questioned. Hate to tell ya, but if you end up picking a fight with the cons, they'll hunt you down and gun anyone in their way. She's right. As you stand now, you wouldn't last 10 seconds against them. RC added. Heck, if this was con envoy you were attacking, you three would already be dead. But, I think you three already know this. Alita said, which caused Ayano and Yukiya to scowl. You claim to be crazy, and maybe you are, but you're not stupid. You don't seem like the type to throw away your lives when you know you have no chance at victory. You have another goal in mind. Oh really? Ayano scowled. Really? Suzaku replied. I know when someone is acting to deliberately throw their life away, and I know you three weren't planning on doing it here. There has to be more to it. Leila insisted. This isn't just about nightmares, or even fighting the Decepticons. What is it you three really want? Seeing no way around it, Ryo spoke the truth. A place to belong. To belong. Lelouch, Alita, and Leila all thought at the same time. First, Britannia practically destroyed Japan, turning all of us normal people into 11s, not even worth sparing so much as a sideways glance. Ryo began. Then the cons showed up and really made a mess of things. But I will admit that seeing Britannia wiped off the map did bring a smile to my face, no less than what those bastards deserve. But I also know that the rest of us are next. Pretty soon, the EU and even the Chinese Federation will get wiped away too. First there was no place for us Japanese, and soon there won't be a place for anyone. You're not wrong, Akito admitted. As things stand now with world politics, the Decepticons will conquer everything before they know it. So, you were what? Hoping to start your own colony or something for other refugees? Orpheus asked. Looking for a condo on the beach or something? Bulkhead also asked. Hey, I don't have any interest in becoming the representative for all 11s or other refugees or anything like that. Ryo replied. All we want is a place to call home. So, a condo on a beach actually does sound nice. You got the keys ready. He attempted a joke, which earned a slight snort from Bulkhead, but also a slight scowl from Ultra Magnus. Your predicament is no excuse for the actions you've taken, placing innocent lives in danger and even the act of killing. Ultra Magnus said seriously. These are serious crimes, and you will face the consequences. Yeah, we know when we've hit a dead end. Ryo admitted. But at the very least, I'm glad we went out with a bang. Fighting the Black Knights and the Autobots. Now that's one heck of a way to go. If I was going to get my ass handed to me by anyone, I sure as hell didn't expect it from the infamous Zero. He glanced toward the masked revolutionary as Lelouch's eyes carried a serious yet sympathetic expression. The other Autobots and Black Knights, and even Leila, looked toward Ayano and Yukiya. One look in their eyes told them they felt the exact same way as Ryo. Whatever fate they would have, they would share it together. That was enough for Leila to make her choice on what to do with them. Alright, if you want a place to belong, I can give you one. Leila said, getting everyone's attention. Why not join my team? It's as close to a home as you'll find. Commander Malkel, I most protest. Magnus said immediately. Their actions. I know what they've done, Commander Magnus. Which is why I am placing them under arrest. Leila explained. These three are now in my custody to do as I see fit, such as providing them with food, clothing, and whatever necessities they require. I see what she's doing. Lelouch thought to himself. Even though they are technically under arrest, she's giving them a chance to not only atone, but also the place to call home they desperately crave. Not to mention they've proven to be skilled combatants and strategists, having sprung this ambush on us. If this were against the Decepticons, while I don't see them winning against Megatron, they can still do a number on them. And right now, we need all the help we can get. Ultra Magnus, I believe that is the best option. Lelouch spoke to the Autobot commander. Even so, it's not really our call to make. We're guests here in the EU and are unable to pass judgment on these three. And seeing how General Smillis is still unresponsive, Leila is the only one here who can make that call, so it's up to her and no one else. Leila turned toward Zero in surprise before smiling, realizing what he was doing. Thank you, Lelouch. Yeah, I think we get it. Rio said in acceptance, causing the Autobots to lower their weapons, as well as the Black Knights and other soldiers, even as several EU military aircraft arrived on the scene. If we say no, we go boom. That's it, right? We don't have a choice. No, you do have a choice. Alita began as she walked up to speak to Rio directly. All living beings have the freedom to choose. You can choose to come with us, and we'll give you not only a place to call home, but even the means to fight the Decepticons like you want. But you can still say no, in which we will leave you to the proper authorities. Granted, it doesn't seem like much of a choice, but it still is one. She kneeled down to be at eye level with the young man before holding out her hand. So, choose. Rio was more than a little stunned. This giant alien robot was talking to him as an equal. Even though he heard all the televised speeches of the BKs and bots preaching, freedom is the right of all sentient beings and stuff like that, he had expected at least some of them were acting all high and mighty, particularly their leadership. But it would seem that is not the case. There was something in Alita's eyes that seemed to put him at ease and cause him to smile. Alright, he accepted her hand. We're in Euro-Britannia, Istanbul, headquarters of the Order of Michael. Duke Valens has issued a command that all 4 holy orders are to relocate to St. Petersburg. Michel Manfredi explained as he sat in his command chair, talking to one of his most trusted subordinates, a young man of Japanese ethnicity with green eyes and long indigo hair tied back in a ponytail. All 4 orders, sir. The Order of Raphael had sustained significant damage in their last battle. Manfredi replied. But more importantly, Duke Valens is expecting the Decepticons to finally make their move on Euro-Britannia. Even Princess Maribel and her guard will be there too. Do you suspect we will go to war with the Decepticons? Or are we going to try and appease to them in an effort to avoid suffering the same fate as the homeland? Manfredi sighed in mental exhaustion. Honestly, Shin, I have no idea. Perhaps the time to strike is now. The soldier named Shin said. If you haven't heard, the Black Knights and the Autobots have resurfaced, and they've caused enough trouble with the Decepticons that has spurred a series of rebellions and uprisings across Decepticon-occupied areas. Perhaps we can find a way to take advantage of that. Perhaps, but it's not my call to make. Ultimately, that belongs to Duke Valens. Manfredi answered. Can I ask you a personal question, sir? Of course. Manfredi encouraged. As the former Knight of 2, do you regret not being there in the homeland when the Decepticons attacked? Shin asked. Manfredi didn't answer right away. A part of me does, yes. But there is no sense in dwelling on the past. If we are called to battle against the Decepticons, then I will lead the Order of Michael to victory against those vile creatures. Shin narrowed his eyes. Thanks to them, the world is in chaos. The late Emperor was a fool to ally with those monsters, they will drain our world dry. Manfredi smiled. Do not worry, Shin. Our cause is a righteous one, and I believe that the Decepticons will be brought down by the blade of justice. Shin, the blood of warriors of Orient flows in your veins, and your commitment to Euro-Britannia is unquestionable. Your words honor me, Sir Manfredi. Shin replied. "And now, I will take over the Order of Michael." Manfredi looked in surprise, but it soon turned into a hearty laugh. "You know, you're always so serious. It's difficult to tell when you're joking." He walked to his trusted subordinate and placed his hands on his shoulder as he smiled. "In another 5 years, I will step down and you will lead the Order of Michael as my successor. Assuming the Decepticons don't wipe us out before then, that is." He attempted a joke of his own before speaking sincerely. "Shin, you've come to mean more to me than my own brother." "Brother. That's right," Manfredi continued. "Let us save this world together and lead it into a bright new future." "You're horrible." That took Manfredi by surprise as Shin stepped back. "Shin. It's rather unfortunate. You don't have what it takes to command the Order of Michael," Shin stated. "What are you saying? You are unfit." Apologies. With a wave of his hand, the red sigil of a Geass manifested in Shin's left eye. "Sir Manfredi, please begin your journey." With that command, a red ring formed in Manfredi's eyes, and he was under Shin's total control. "Of course. It is time." Manfredi drew his sword and brought it toward his own neck. "At your command, Shin Hyuga Shang, my lord." With that, he shoved the blade into his neck, ending his life in an instant, his bloody corpse falling to the ground as it gushed over Shin, who seemed completely unfazed by it, as if he were just hit by nothing more than rain. Shin then smirked. "Safe travels, Manfredi." He chuckled as he looked out the window. "The time has come, for this world, to end. To divide and unite." The central palace of St. Petersburg was quite packed as the entire throne room was filled with nobles and soldiers from Euro-Britannia, even those who managed to escape the fall of Britannia at the hands of the Decepticons. The Grand Masters of 3 of the main holy orders gathered together around the throne where Duke Hyland sat: Andrea Farnese of the Holy Order of Raphael, Godefroy du Villain of the Holy Order of Gabriel, and Raymond du Saint Giles of the Holy Order of Uriel. But there was a special person standing close to the throne where Hyland sat: Maribel Mel Britannia. The red-clad princess looked around the throne to see the many nobles and soldiers gathered for this ceremony. Among them were her own personal squad, the Gilda Knights, who happened to be standing close to a similarly red-clad group of soldiers led by a young man with vibrant red hair and a wild look in his eyes. She made eye contact with her personal knight, Uldren, before she gave an assuring nod to her princess. Though she wasn't a fan of most pageantries like this, she understood why Duke Hyland organized this event. It was the knighting of the new head to the Holy Order of Michael, and such a thing could raise the morale of the people a bit, which she saw was necessary given the state the world was currently in. Soon the man of honor, Shin Hyuga Shang, walked down the line of nobles and soldiers as they all stood straight, the soldiers all saluting him as he walked with such grace and nobility. However, underneath her calm appearance, Maribel looked a bit uneasy. There was something about Shang that made her feel uncomfortable, and it wasn't because he was of Japanese descent, it was something else. Shin would soon reach the small flight of stairs to the throne before taking a bow to the Duke, Princess, and 3 Grand Masters. "In the name of the heavens, the earth, and the Holy Spirit, I Duke Villains decree the following. Shin Hyuga Shang shall be named Grand Master of the Holy Order of Michael. One of the 4 great orders that is bound to serve and protect the nation of Euro-Britannia," the Duke announced before standing up. "Lord Shang, if you would, please approach the throne." Shang stood up and did as told before Andrea, Godefroy, Raymond, and even Maribel drew and raised their swords and rose them before joining them up high, with Shin joining them with his own blade. "All hail Britannia," the 5 of them said, resulting in a series of claps from the audience. Soon, the celebrations came to an end as the nobles and soldiers began to depart. Maribel was about to rejoin her squad when the Duke spoke out. "Excuse me, Your Majesty." Hyland got her attention. "I would encourage you to please remain here. There is an urgent matter I would need to discuss with you and the Grand Masters." "As you wish," Maribel replied before turning to Uldren and the rest of the Glinda Knights, giving a nod, silently telling them to return to the Granberry and she would join them later. They left soon after, leaving the 6 individuals alone in the large throne room. She paid a glance to the newest Grand Master before speaking. "Congratulations, Shin. I'm sure you've worked hard for this." She spoke to him in a polite tone but looked at him with suspicion. She knew Manfredi quite well as he was the former Knight of 2 in the homeland, and it was highly unlikely he took his own life despite the official reports. "I am thankful, Your Majesty." Shin nodded with a smile, but he saw through her facade quite easily. It is my hope that I live up to my predecessor's expectations. I hope so as well, Duke Highland said, and I thank you all for agreeing to this ceremony. With the world in such a state of turmoil, the people need events like this. It helps put their minds at ease. All due respect, my lord. I have a feeling that we weren't all called here just for the ceremony. Andrea spoke, which is evident by you requesting that remain here even after the ceremony has completed, and our guests departed. Perceptive as always, Lord Farnese. Duke Highland nodded solemnly. As I said, the world is in a great crisis, one that threatens us more so than any other superpower. Because of that, I have been asked to arrange a meeting that could determine whether or not Euro-Britannia has a future. It didn't take long for them to realize who he was talking about, resulting in a series of mixed reactions. Andrea scowled lightly, as did the elderly Raymond, while Shin looked with interest. Maribel's fists clenched as she openly scowled. You have got to be kidding me, she muttered. However, Godefroy wasn't so subtle. Those wretched Decepticons dare to come here, he exclaimed in an infuriated tone. After everything they've done. Lord Villain, please restrain yourself. Duke Highland exclaimed, causing Godefroy to look at him in surprise, as well as Maribel and the other Grand Masters. Listen, all of you. You have every reason to be infuriated with this, as do I. But we have no choice in this matter. We all saw what they did to the homeland, we cannot afford to wage open war with the Decepticons. So, I ask you all please to be patient. In these desperate of times, for the sake of our people, we must take the most desperate of measures. Godefroy still scowled, but Andrea put a hand on his shoulder to calm him down slightly while Shin and Raymond simply nodded. Maribel put her scowl away as well. As you wish, but I don't have to like it. Maribel stated. The Duke gave a sigh before the door to his throne room opened and two certain Decepticons entered the chambers. Wise words, Duke Valens. The silver-clad Decepticon spoke as he walked forward before stopping just before the group of glaring humans, while Shin looked up in awe, his eyes laying on a Cybertronian for the first time. Please allow us to introduce ourselves. My name is Steeljaw. And I am Skybite. The Sharkticon followed. We come on behest of Lord Megatron. And where is Lord Megatron? Maribel questioned. Does he think us too beneath him to simply negotiate with? Unfortunately, our lord is currently occupied with other matters at hand. Steeljaw began. Oh, you must be Maribel Mel Britannia, the only member of the former royal family that remains free. Anyone else has either died, been imprisoned, or defected. So, I can understand why you feel such contempt toward us. Maribel was about to speak out again, against the wishes of Duke Highland, but Shin stepped in front to keep such an outburst from happening. Please excuse Her Majesty. Shin spoke in a calm tone. As you previously acknowledged, she has lost a great deal in the fall of Britannia. But, it is our hope that we believe a more peaceful arrangement can be made between our two forces. Indeed, that is our hope as well. Skybite replied. I'm sure that you're each well aware at this point, but the Autobots and the Black Knights have resurfaced. As a result, your world is in a state of panic and confusion. But, with us, your nation could help restore order to this world. Order? Is that what you call it? Godefroy was already beginning to lose his composure. You've completely uprooted the entire Britannia Empire. Euro-Britannia is all that remains now. So many people have died at your hands. Lord Godefroy. Duke Highland was about to calm him down. It's quite alright, Steeljaw assured, still speaking in a calm tone of voice. It's perfectly understandable why you feel that way. But, if you would allow, please let me explain. Even before we came to Earth, your planet was already in a state of chaos. The former Britannian Empire has attempted to steamroll the planet for many decades, wiping out several smaller nations and stripping them of their freedom. That is the reason why they had to be overthrown. The Holy Britannian Empire was, simply put, an embodiment of chaos and destruction. Their emperor had to be dealt with, because if he continued along his path, the Earth would have been destroyed. You don't know that, Raymond muttered. It was still a risk we couldn't afford to take. Steeljaw continued. So yes, we admit, our methods may have seemed extreme, but we had to make sure Britannia could never further harm anyone again. Under the rule of the Decepticons, your world could become much more orderly. Skybite offered. Euro-Britannia could continue to stand as it is now, under Decepticon leadership of course, but it would be as if we weren't even here. And should we refuse such an offer? Andrea questioned. Do you intend to force us? Oh, we're not the ones you should be worried about. Steeljaw answered. We actually believe the Autobots and the Black Knights seek aid from the EU, in order to gather allies of their own. Should this be true, they may attempt to seize control of your state. You should know by now just how dangerous they are, which could prove even more so should an entire superpower offer its support. However, with our assistance, we can not only keep the enemy at bay, but even begin to help establish a new state that can bring order to this chaotic world. This caused the group gathered to look amongst each other. If it was true, and the Autobots and the Black Knights were to actually gain aid from the EU, it could embolden their forces to push back against them. Let us discuss your terms. Duke Highland accepted, causing Steeljaw to smile. Despite the glares from several of the Grandmasters, as well as Maribel, they had no choice in the matter but to accept. Euphemia, I hope you and your friends know what you're doing. Duke Highland thought to himself. However, while everyone else appeared in reluctance, Shin had an intrigued look in his eyes. Perhaps something useful can come from working alongside the Decepticons. Castle Weisswolf. Rio gave a yell as he sliced his Alexander's axe toward Sideswipe, who blocked and parried with his own sword before locking weapons. Both combatants appeared to be outside the castle. You're pretty good, pal, but are you good enough to keep up with me? Sideswipe said with a smirk. An equally dangerous smirk fell on Rio's face. Someone's cocky. But who am I to talk? He continued his sparring match as his variant of the Alexander continued to parry the axe against Sideswipe's sword. Both appeared to be having fun. At the same time, Grindcore looked almost like he was dancing on the ground, when really he was avoiding the small, non-lethal, explosions shot by the sniper rifle wielded by Yukia's Alexander. Nice dance moves you got, pal. Let's see you do one of those Scottish tap dance things. Yukia chuckled as he continued to shoot. Oh, you wanna dance, huh? I'll give you something better. Grindcore stated as he transformed into his monster truck form and drove directly toward the surprised Yukia. Oh crap, he exclaimed before his Alexander turned into his insectoid mode and scurried off with Grindcore in pursuit. Come back here. How are you gonna punch someone when you run away? Grindcore questioned as he continued to give chase. However, another sparring session didn't appear to be going as frivolous as Ayano's own Alexander swung its sword toward Strongarm, who parried it with the blunt of her Energon crossbow before she rolled away and shot at her sparring partner, who converted her Alexander into its insectoid mode before scurrying away. Are you going to run or take this session seriously? Strongarm questioned. You want serious? Ayano questioned with a glare before gunning straight toward the surprised Strongarm and attacked her somewhat ferociously, striking her sword at her. Though Strongarm was able to use her crossbow to parry it, she seemed to barely hold her ground. That is until, she ducked under the swing of the Alexander's sword, grabbed it by the waist and threw it to the side. What's wrong? I thought you wanted me to take this seriously. Ayano stated as she went on the attack once more, but this time, Strongarm was ready for her. Well, they certainly know what they're doing. Prowl commented as he stood alongside RC and Bulkhead, observing the sparring sessions. But the way those nightmares crawl around creeps me out, Bulkhead said with a slight shiver. Kinda reminds me of the Insecticons. Either way, it's clear this isn't the first time these kids have piloted nightmares. RC said. They're definitely good, but you worry they could betray us. Prowl finished for her. It is a possibility. RC said. Well, maybe not. Bulkhead suggested. I mean, Colin and the others were just like that when we first formed the Black Knights and look how they turned out. Maybe it could be the same for these kids. You're pretty optimistic, Bulk, and I like that, but try not to let it blind you to the real possibility of desertion. RC told him. At the same time, in a different area outside the castle, the Radiant Wave Surger from Colin's Gurren shot a series of energy blasts towards the Alexander piloted by Akito as his own nightmare, currently in its insectoid mode, scurried around each blast before closing the distance to stand upright and bring down its tonfa toward the Gurren, which parried it with a quick draw of the knife before shooting into the sky with the Gurren's energy wing system. You're pretty good, Akito. Colin commented with an impressed smirk. But let's see you dodge this. She shot a series of blasts from the Gurren's energy wings. Akito's only response was a smirk of his own as his Alexander converted back into its insect mode and easily maneuvered around each blast before the Gurren shot back down and fired its /Harkins. But Akito dove his Alexander directly under the slashes and the Gurren just before it landed and stood upright from behind to attack, but Colin quickly turned the Gurren around to lock her knife with the tonfa as the Alexander's other arm shot out a hidden blade, which the Gurren met with a flash of the Surger claw, melting it before the Alexander leapt back and the Gurren pursued. Wow. Rai looked more than a little impressed as he, Gino, Smokescreen, Bumblebee, and Monica watched this sparring match. Few pilots can actually match Colin, and she's in an advanced Cybertronian nightmare. My own Florence was based off the Alexanders, which were designed as prototypes before Britannia procured one in a skirmish against the EU. Monica said. But he's able to take a prototype and use it to go on par with someone on Colin's level. I'm impressed. Yeah, and hey, before coming here, I did some research on this guy. Apparently, they call him the Ghost of Hannibal. Smokescreen commented. Not sure what that means, but it's pretty catchy. Hannibal was a general who fought against the Roman Empire on Earth a long time ago. Bumblebee explained. Apparently, he found a way to get his forces behind enemy lines, which Akito was able to do for the WZERO. Hence the name, Ghost of Hannibal. Gino said as he continued to watch the sparring match. You know, this guy might actually be Knight of the Round level. If Britannia didn't have that whole stupid number system, I can totally see Akito becoming a Knight, and a high-ranking one at that. Maybe you'd like to spar with him, partner? Smokescreen asked. See for yourself. Gino had a nervous smile. I don't think so. Don't tell him I said this, but Akito kinda scares me. At the same time, inside the castle, Zero, Sarah, Euphemia, Orpheus, and Suzaku sat with Leila, Claus, and fellow WZERO officer Oscar Hamill around a table on an indoor balcony, with Ultra Magnus and Alita One standing next to them as they discussed the situation regarding their newest recruits. And they're the only survivors? Zero asked as Orpheus finished his explanation. That's right. Orpheus confirmed. Their group suffered many casualties until only those three were left. They scavenged for food, weapons, anything they could get their hands on. Well, when your only option in the EU is to live in the ghettos, it seems obvious they'd make such a choice. Sarah commented. It's not too different from how Area 11 worked in the past. Euphemia and Leila shared sympathetic expressions while everyone else remained more serious. Commander Malkol, I understand this is your decision to make, but I still feel I most protest your reasoning for allowing those three to stay here. Ultra Magnus spoke. I have to agree with the Autobot. Oscar stated. They attempted to abduct General Smillas and even attacked you. I understand your concerns and I thank you for them. Leila spoke. But I didn't just invite them here because I felt I could give them a home. Not including them, Akito is the only remaining soldier in the WZERO unit. No matter how skilled he is, a single pilot alone can't win a battle. You can thank that idiot Anu for that. Claus said in his causal tone of voice as he slipped some alcohol in his coffee. He was the one who put the self-destruct option in all our nightmares. All the more reason to see him discharged. Suzaku said, doing his best to maintain a profession disposition as he, and even Lelouch, both scowled at the mention of that man. They knew what kind of man Pierre Anu was after Leila told them about him, and he was not the kind of man they would want in their organization. That being said, we need more pilots. Leila continued. Rio and the others have proven to be capable of holding their own. And if our opponents are the Decepticons, we need all the assistance we can get. Don't misunderstand me, Ultra Magnus said. If those three prove to be valuable assets and are capable of contributing to our cause, I am willing to accept that. But we must also consider the possibility of turning their nightmares against us. Do you really think they would do that, Ultra Magnus? Euphemia asked. It is a possibility, I'm not saying it's guaranteed. The Autobot commander replied. Another thing to consider is that they're kids. Alita once said. I know it doesn't justify their actions, but they should still be given a chance at redemption. Optimus himself said that everyone is capable of change, and I agree, and while I do acknowledge that not everyone wants to change, they do have the capacity for it. We should still offer that chance to them. If we want them truly on our side, we need to earn their trust. Zero added. That's always been the key ever since we formed the Black Knight Autobot Alliance in Japan so long ago. It's about establishing trust. And how do you propose we earn that trust? Oscar asked. By fighting alongside them, on the battlefield. Suzaku said. That usually is the best way for soldiers to earn respect. Sarah added, having seen that thousands of times before in her immortal life. I am hoping we are able to establish that trust and rebuild the WZERO. Leila said. She noticed how Magnus was about to protest and spoke directly toward him. But, if in the event it does not work out, I am prepared to turn them over to the authorities. But until they give me a reason to prove that they are not trustworthy, we will treat them with respect. Do you find these terms acceptable, Commander Magnus? I do. Ultra Magnus nodded with confirmation. He may not have liked the idea, but he wasn't completely opposed to it either. Meanwhile, within the laboratory of the castle, Jetfire was able to kneel down and fit inside the laboratory, after entering through the Nightmare Bay door as he observed the work of Anna, Sophie, and several other young scientists, all of whom appeared to be young women, excluding one man. So, you're working with nightmare drones. Jetfire observed as he saw one of the Alexanders, not being operated by a pilot, but hooked up to several cables as it walked along a treadmill, while being controlled by Anna. Yes, we're hoping it could help minimize casualties on the battlefield. Anna replied. But with our current AI system, I fear we may not be able to reach that kind of level of expectations. Jetfire began to think. Am I correct to assume that the Alexander pilots are linked together through some sort of neural link? It's what we're actually hoping to achieve. Sophie replied. It would enable our pilots to communicate much more effectively and respond to enemy attacks faster than normal. But we've been unable to work out the bugs. Maybe we could do something similar with these drones you're developing. Jetfire suggested, getting everyone's attention. There's a Cybertronian device called the Omniglobe that allows the user to command multiple battles at once. We've even developed one for Zero. Maybe we could develop a similar device that can allow a group of pilots to command legions of drones. Depending on the user in question, it may increase reaction time and we may not have to worry about any AI issues. Is something like that really possible? Anna asked. It's only a theory, but I think it's one worth exploring. Jetfire offered. Sophie couldn't help but smirk. Sounds almost like a video game. But a game I'd be interested in playing. Ryo gave a loud sigh as he laid back in his bed, he and his friends having returned to their dorm room after their sparring session against the Autobots came to an end. Those bots put up one heck of a fight, I'll grant them that. Ryo commented as Yukiya worked on a small pad-like device. And just how long are we planning to stick around here? Ayano asked as she sat near the windowsill, looking outside. As long as we continue to get free room and board. Ryo replied. I mean, we're in a castle that's got giant alien robots inside, not to mention freaking Zero. And how long until they drag us into their little war? Ayano questioned with a glare. Those guys want to take on the world, that's their thing. But why do we have to go along with it? Don't get so worked up. Ryo said as he sat up. We both know the reason Ayano's freaking out is because they confiscated her dagger. Yukiya said with a smirk. Yeah, so what? Ayano exclaimed. It belongs to me. They have no right. Just because they say they're fighting for the freedom of the world or whatever doesn't mean. Hey Yukiya, you finished setting up our next game? Ryo asked, much to Ayano's confusion. Yeah, just about. Yukiya confirmed as he continued to work on his pad. What are you talking about? Ayano asked. Tell me. Look, don't worry. You'll find out soon enough. Ryo told her. Come on. Just tell me, guys. She exclaimed. Ayano, all you need to know is that we belong here. Yukiya said in a mysterious tone of voice. Trust me. However, unbeknownst to them, there was someone else listening in on their conversation. Hanging just below their window was Prowl, who clung to the wall and used his cloaking field to keep himself invisible. He had tuned his audio sensors to listen to every word they said. He could tell from the way Ryo and Yukiya were speaking that they were planning something. This was not unexpected, but it was also something to be concerned about. So, he relayed the information to his human commander. Yes, I understand Prowl. Lelouch said from his personal guest quarters as Prowl had just contacted him. Thank you, continue to monitor them. Alright. Understood. Just as he hung up, he heard a knock on his door. Come in. The door opened to reveal Orpheus as he entered the room. Judging by the look on your face, I'm assuming our guests are up to something. Yeah, seems like it. Lelouch confirmed. Prowl's watching over them. Well, they're not the only ones. Orpheus said, getting Lelouch's attention. There's something about Claws. I'm not sure what exactly, but I can tell from the look in his eyes that he's hiding something. Are you sure? Lelouch asked. Trust me. Orpheus replied. There's something going on with him. All right. Lelouch nodded. Contact our agents on Horai Island and have them do some digging and have them do the same for Gene Smillas. I can't help but think something may be off with him as well. Doing digging on the one person who might be able to get us a word in with the EU politics. Orpheus asked with a slight smirk. For someone who's acting idealistic, you can be pretty sneaky too, Lelouch. Hope for the best but be prepared for the worst. Lelouch said with a serious expression. That's one of the first things I've learned since this war started. At the same time, Sarah sat in Leila's room as the immortal girl pressed her hand against Leila's forehead before pulling away. Well, Leila asked. I can safely say that power still dwells within you. Sarah said. But, it appears to have undergone a change. I can't say for certain what that change is, or how it occurred, but you definitely still have your Geass. Leila wasn't quite sure what to make of that. On one hand, it felt good to know that she had a mysterious power that could provide aid for their cause, seeing how Lelouch and Rai and even Orpheus have been able to use theirs. But at the same time, after hearing how this power could also be connected to something that could only be described as the devil, it also made her uncomfortable. But I still have control over this ability? Leila asked. At the moment, I would say so. Sarah replied. Or to be more accurate, you can control whether or not that power can be used at all. If you don't use it within a year or so, the power will fade away. If you do decide to use it, it will become a permanent part of you. But it's up to you whether or not you want to use this power. I've seen the good it can do, yes. But I've also seen the horrors that Geass is capable of, to others, as well as to the user themselves. Leila understood. She was told everything Sarah knew about Geass, including how the late Emperor of Britannia had one, as well as how he had a brother who was immortal like her. She was also told of Mao who allowed his power to drive him mad, and even how Megatron gained a power of his own that was beyond horrific. By the way, I never did get a chance to thank you. Leila said, getting Chera's attention as Leila's pet cat, Eliza, leapt up into her lap, prompting the blonde girl to begin petting her. You saved my life. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't even be here. Don't worry about it, Sarah said as she looked away. At that time, I saw you as a potential contractor that might be able to help me rid me of my immortality. But now you're someone who truly wants to change this world for the better. Leila said, who wants to use your power to help people? You make me sound like one of those comic heroes. Sarah said. But yes, I'm going to do what I can to help Lelouch and Optimus fix this world. I've met Lelouch so I can already understand what type of man he is. Leila said. But, what about Optimus? What is he like? Sarah couldn't help but smile warmly. It's hard to put it into words. But, at a time when I was completely devoid of all emotion, he brought hope back into my life. I think it'll make more sense if you see him for yourself. I'm sure the two of you would get along quite well. Leila smiled at that. I'm looking forward to it. Euro-Britannia. Shin Hyuga Shang was currently outside his adoptive family's large manor where a party was being held in his honor. However, he was nowhere near the party itself as it was inside the manor while he was outside, facing his adoptive younger sister, who sat at a fountain with an upset look on her face. Come on in, Alice. Shin told her. You wouldn't want mother to worry. I hate this. She began. Everything's a mess now and all those people want to party. Why? You're not wrong, Shin said. The world is in a chaotic state right now, but maybe that's why we need these parties. It helps provide levity. We can't be too down in the dumps now, can we? He asked in a seemingly playful tone. But I don't even know these people, Alice said before she looked up to her brother. Can we please go somewhere else, big brother? A place where we don't have to worry about these giant metal monsters fighting each other. She asked as she held his hand. I'm not sure if there is a place like that right now, but I promise I'll make one. Shin said as he kneeled down to her level. Now that I'm the head of the Order of Michael, I'm in a position where I can help fix this world. I promise Alice, everything's going to be okay. Hearing her adoptive brother's voice was enough to calm her nerves as she wrapped her arms around him, an embrace he was quick to return. However, there was a look in his eyes that she wouldn't notice. A look that seemed equivalent of looking into an empty abyss. Sir. A young woman soldier approached them. She had brownish red hair and light purple eyes, and a military uniform that seemed like she was from the Order of Michael. Shin noticed her presence as she gestured behind her toward a silver car in the driveway near the front of the mansion. He nodded in understanding as he stood up. Alice, I have to take care of something. Jean will escort you back inside to see Mother, I will be with you shortly. Shin told her. Okay. Alice nodded in understanding as she followed Jean inside. Once they were gone, Shin's fake smile vanished as he walked toward the car. The door opened and he stepped into the front seat before it closed. Not much of a party man, are you? The disguised Decepticon commented. It's Steeljaw, correct? Shin asked. Is there something you need from me? Yes, actually. Steeljaw replied. We're organizing a joint mission between your order, as well as Princess Maribel's Glindonites, and the Decepticons to see how well we can work together. Will this mission involve a confrontation with the Autobots and the Black Knights? Shin asked. Most likely, it's at a rather strategic point. Steeljaw said. And I can tell you're just itching for a fight, or rather, you're itching to kill something. Oh, and what makes you say that? Shin questioned as he narrowed his eyes. There's no need to hide it from me. Steeljaw told him. I can see it in your eyes. Your face may carry the appearance of a kind and noble soldier, but that darkness in you tells a different story. It's something I can personally relate to, and because of that, I can see a rather interesting future for you in our cause, brother. Shin's malevolent smile made itself known. Steeljaw, I think you and I are going to get along quite well. Castle Weisswolf. And that's all I have to report, Optimus. Lelouch said as he summed up everything he learned and experienced in the EU to the Autobot leader over a communication frequency. It would seem that you have established good dialogue with an influential individual in the EU. Optimus said. I'm confident we can work with Leila, she seems genuine in wanting to help us. Lelouch stated. However, there is also a part of me that remains suspicious of Smilla's. His comment about his preference of the EU being an empire was somewhat unsettling. I don't want to automatically assume he'll turn us, but you wish to be prepared if that is truly the case, which is why you are having our peace-mark connections look into his background. Optimus replied. I understand. Smilla's influence could benefit our cause, as well as hurt should he indeed turn against us. Right. Lelouch nodded. Anything going on with the Chinese Federation? The Decepticons have already made contact with the High Eunuchs. Optimus reported, causing Lelouch to scowl slightly. Gao Hai and Shink are doing what they can to slow it down, but I foresee trouble from this exchange. If there is anything I can do to help, Lelouch tried. Lelouch, we are capable of handling this. Optimus insisted. You should stay focused on the EU. In our current state, we cannot afford to falter. I understand. Lelouch truly did understand. While he wanted to help Optimus, he knew the Prime was more than capable of handling himself. Not to mention Ratchet, Ironhide, Ogi, Toto, Kagaya, and Cornelia were all with him, so there didn't seem to be much to worry about at the moment. Be careful. My instincts are telling me Schneisel may be involved as well, and while he is no warrior, he is far from predictable. Acknowledged. Optimus replied. Good luck. You as well. Lelouch signed off before he sighed. He then received another call on a separate line, which he was quick to answer. Hello. Lelouch, I am sorry to bother you at this hour, Leila was the one who made contact. Don't be, I'm wide awake. Lelouch replied. Is there something you need? Yes. Claus just arrived with the briefing on a new mission. I would ask that you come down and help review it. Leila requested. I'll be right there. It didn't take long for Lelouch to enter Leila's private study as he sat on a chair across from Claus, while Leila sat at her own desk and the man gave the briefing. So, our little suicide mission this week, Claus began before coughing and straightening himself out. Is he always like this? Lelouch asked Leila. Unfortunately. she replied as she massaged her forehead in minor annoyance, while Lelouch inwardly grimaced, silently wishing Claus would never meet Lloyd. But every instinct told him that those two were bound to cross paths if the WZERO joined the Black Knights. Anyway, Claus got right back on point. Turns out the higher-ups want to move up the Warsaw garrison. Once they learned from Smillas that the mysterious Zero and his alien robot buddies decided to team up with us, they decided to give you guys a little test. They want us to drop behind enemy lines and help advance their territory. Lelouch deduced. They want to know if we're worth giving support. Bingo. Claus pointed his finger at him before taking a swig of his flask. You catch on quick. This is a dangerous mission. Leila seemed to protest. That territory will be covered with enemy units, not to mention the possibility of the Decepticons. Oh, the Decepticons are likely already there. Lelouch said, causing Leila to look at him in surprise. Euphemia was recently contacted by Duke Hyland from Euro-Britannia. The Decepticons have already made contact and are extending a helping hand. But of course, we already know they're working their insidious claws into what's left of Britannia to decide if they either want to enslave them or wipe them out. Claus couldn't help but chuckle. Well, here you are having turned the leader of an enemy state into a double agent. They say you are a man of miracles, Zero, but you really do know how to turn some heads. Wanting to test the Black Knights and the Autobots is one thing. Leila began. But they're also expecting to use the WZERO as decoys. We can't just disobey their orders, now can we, Commander? Claus asked. No, we can't, Lelouch said. If we want support from the EU, we'll have to take this mission. He looked towards the surprised Leila. No doubt she was shocked at how causally he accepted this mission. The Black Knights are all capable fighters, and the Autobots have gotten out of more than their fair share of impossible situations. We can handle this, but that's not all you're worried about, is it? It's your newest recruits, not just the possibility of them abandoning the mission or even shooting us in the back, but whether or not they'll come back at all. Leila saw no point in denying it as she sighed and leaned back in her chair. I knew what I would be getting them into by bringing them into the WZERO, but that does not mean I have to like it. Well, if you don't want those kids to get killed, you'll have to find a way to do just that, Commander. Claus said as he stood up. Well, I'm just about done for the night. See you kids in the morning. He left the room, leaving the two young leaders alone. Lelouch. Leila got his attention. I know I can't disobey this order, but I want to do everything I can to see to it my soldiers come home alive and help your cause. Which is why I will be joining you in this mission. That took Lelouch by surprise. I have nightmare training, I know how to operate the Alexanders. I've been through the simulations, I can handle myself. But have you been in an actual battle before? Lelouch questioned. Simulations and real conflict are two completely different things. I'm aware, but this will be my first real battle. Leila said, causing Lelouch to look with a serious expression. But I am going, and I don't intend to let anyone else stop me. I'm not sure I could. Lelouch said. Though I could use my Geass to stop you, I won't. Tell me, Leila, do you play chess? I do. Leila nodded. They would you care for a game? He requested. Leila accepted the challenge as she had set up the board in front of them. She took the white pieces, while Lelouch took black as usual. Is there a reason for this? She asked. Maybe I just wanted a friendly game. Lelouch replied before a slight smile fell on his face. Nunnally and the others would want me to socialize a bit more. A small smile fell on Leila's face as well. You speak so highly of your sister, I'd love to meet her myself. She said as she made the first move with one of her pawns. I'm sure the two of you would get along quite well. Lelouch said as he moved the black pawn in front of his king. Leila followed with another pawn's movement before he took his king piece and moved it forward, much to Leila's surprise. You start with your king. If the king doesn't lead, how can he expect his subordinates to follow? Lelouch questioned rhetorically. I see, Leila seemed to understand. A leader has to set the best example, I think I understand, and I agree completely. Which is another reason you want to join us in the upcoming battle. Lelouch said. Not just to help protect your soldiers, but to tell them that you are willing to fight alongside them and risk your own life if need be. I'm glad I've finally met someone who understands. Leila smiled as they resumed their game. But I also can't help but notice there is a certain soldier in your ranks that means a little more to you than the others. Lelouch noted, catching Leila's attention. You care quite a bit about Aikido, don't you? And it's not just as a leader-subordinate role, or even that of a simple friend. Maybe a bit more. Lelouch had to stop himself before a feeling of comic dread filled his body. Oh my god, I'm turning into Millie. Leila's cheeks turned pink as she looked away. It's really that obvious, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry or anything. Lelouch quickly said. It's your personal business and I. No, it's alright. You're right, Leila said. It is rather unprofessional, isn't it? Me having feelings for my subordinate. Lelouch sighed before he spoke in a more understanding tone. I know how something like that feels. A few of my closest friends are in the Black Knights. Suzaku is the first real friend I ever made outside the royal family, and Bumblebee is also in a similar boat, the first Autobot I ever met and one who's always been at my side no matter what. And they're not the only ones. My brother and 3 of my dear sisters are also in the Black Knights. And, you're not the only one who might have feelings for a certain pilot in your ranks. Colin, she means a bit more to me than just a friend. Leila gave a genuine smile in his direction. I honestly think that's great. That got his attention. To form genuine bonds with all these people, I understand that we're soldiers, and we have duties we must fulfill, but we're still human and I think we're allowed to make bonds with others. It helps establish trust. Well, you and I are human, while the Autobots aren't, but you know what I mean. She said with a slight chuckle. Yes, I do. Lelouch nodded before he smiled humorously. Well, to our continued unprofessional relationships and may they blossom. He joked, which earned a genuine laugh from Leila. The next day. This is quite amazing, Yuffie said as she, Suzaku, Rai, Gino, and Monica walked through the halls of Castle Weisswolf with Anna. I know Britannia has had a need for constructing palaces, but an actual castle from medieval period, it's truly incredible. Got that right. Feels like we'd gone back in time, huh? Gino said in an equal amount of awe. Just try not to have a seizure over it. Monica teased, causing Gino to chuckle awkwardly, while Yuffie just giggled. Yes, it does feel rather incredible. Anna said. This castle has been around since the medieval period. Leila's taken quite a liking to it, and with the proper modifications, it serves as both a home and a base for the WZERO unit. Suzaku smiled. I take it you and Leila are pretty close. We're childhood friends. Anna confirmed. We attended the same school together. When she joined the military, I followed. Her family had her study political matters while I went the scientific route. The Malkel family. Rice said. They knew she was Britannian, right? Anna's smile faded. Yes, and that was the reason they adopted her, to have Britannian noble blood in their family. Though I am grateful it gave me the chance to meet Leila, I do not approve of her so-called family using her like that. Yeah, family thinking of political gain over everything else. That certainly sounds familiar, Rice said in a low grumble, while everyone else winced as each of them had some kind of experience dealing with that. Their attention was caught by the sound of a light meow, drawing them toward the corner of the hallway where a large crack was in the walls, and they could see the green eyes of a certain feline. A cat? Monica asked. It's Eliza, Leila's cat. Anna replied. She likes to wonder about the castle. Euphemia was the first to approach the cat in hiding as she kneeled down to her level. Ah, don't be afraid, we won't hurt you. She tried to reach out, but Eliza backed up slightly. Meow, Yuffie said, which drew Eliza's attention. Meow. Meow. She extended only her fingers, which allowed Eliza to slowly step out and burr as she brushed herself against Yuffie's hand, causing her to smile. This earned a smile from everyone else too as Yuffie picked up Eliza in her arms. Suzaku walked up to try and pet her himself, only for the cat to bite onto his hand, causing him to grimace in pain. Oh, I'm sorry. Anna quickly ran up and took Eliza in her arms, who began to settle with a purr. I don't know where that came from. Eliza is usually very friendly. Nah, it's not her. Rice said with a sad smirk. All cats hate Suzaku. Unfortunate, but true. Suzaku said in comic reluctance while Gino laughed and even Monica chuckled a bit. Meanwhile, Colin and RC walked about the grounds of the castle, with seemingly nothing to do and preoccupy their time. So, we got our next mission coming. Colin asked her Autobot partner. According to Lelouch, he and Leila got it yesterday. RC replied. We should be debriefed on it soon. Good, 'cause I hate just standing around and doing nothing. Colin said. Yeah, I know. RC nodded as they found themselves walking toward a cemetery, but were surprised to see Akito there, kneeling before a small pile of stone that he was straightening out. He then turned around and noticed their presence before turning back. What are you doing out here? Colin asked. Paying my respects. Akito answered. I take it some of these people were friends of yours. RC assumed. None of them, only this. Akito referred to the small stone pile in front of him as he stood up. This is a grave for those killed in the Narva operation. We all made a pact before that mission, those who survived, would build something here for the ones that didn't. I was the only survivor. Was it true that the old commander of this unit rigged your nightmares to self-destruct when cornered? RC questioned with venom laced in her voice. Yes, because we were 11s, we were expendable. Akito said, which only caused Colin to growl in anger. Former Commander Anu even said it was part of our ways, saying it was the equivalent of seppuku. I wish he was still here, just so I can kick all of his teeth out. Colin stated angrily. That earned a smirk from Akito. I can only imagine the fit he'd throw from that. The humor however vanished as quickly as it came. Were you friends with any of them? RC asked. You could say that, Akito said. I knew their names, I heard their stories, we trained together, but does that make us really friends? What is it that makes people friends? Is it working and training together, or is it something else? They call you the ghost of Hannibal. Colin said to him, but I can definitely see where the ghost part comes in. Because I'm dead on the inside? Akito asked rhetorically. It's a look we're sadly familiar with. Colin replied, even in the mirror. Something even RC nodded to in agreement. So, this is our target. Ultra Magnus said as he, Lelouch, Leila, Bumblebee, Bulkhead, Elita 1, Sarah, Sideswipe, Smokescreen, Grindcore, and Strongarm gathered around a holographic display from within the bridge of the Ironwall that identified the city. The Euro-Britannian city of Slonim will likely be heavily guarded. Even though the outer perimeter of this line has turrets, we can expect nightmare and even Decepticon resistance once we enter the city. But if we are able to break the defenses and take the city, it'll create a hole in the line. Elita 1 continued. Which, in turn, will allow the EU forces to advance. Lelouch said. If we pull this off without a hitch, it'll not only be a large victory for the EU as a whole, but it'll also impress the higher-ups enough to want to lend their support. You really thought this through, didn't you? Leila asked, causing Lelouch to smirk in confirmation. So, when are we gonna go? I'm eager to punch someone. Grindcore stated. We could slip a few bombs in via groundbridge and shake up the city wrecker style. Bulkhead offered. Negative. Ultra Magnus shook his head. If there are Decepticons stationed in that city, they will detect our ground bridges and intercept the payloads before they can deal any significant damage. So, we'll arrive in one bridge. Smokescreen asked. Won't that give us all away since we'd be a big target? Even bigger if we include all those drones. Sideswipe added. Sirs, if I may make a suggestion. Strongarm raised her hand. Perhaps we could invade the city from multiple directions. Use multiple ground bridge portals to enter the city in small groups, force the enemy to scatter. You have good idea, Strongarm. Lelouch granted. But without knowing what exactly is in that city, we'd be spreading ourselves too thin. So here is what I propose. We all exit through a single ground bridge and send the drones into the city first. At the same time, our main force will split into several smaller teams and encircle the city. Once the drones make enemy contact, we move in. And while our main forces deal with the enemy in the city, Jetfire will take to the skies and neutralize the long-distance arterially to further cripple enemy forces, making it easier for the EU to advance. And there's Chess Master, we all know. Sarah teased. A well-thought-out strategy, I second it. Ultra Magnus thought it was the best course of action. Then we better have our forces ready. Elita 1 said as Leila chuckled a bit. Just before you all arrived, we only just finished working on Apollo's chariot. She began. A rocket that would enable our units to fly in high altitude and drop behind enemy lines almost undetected. Yet you have a portal system that easily lets you do the same while consuming less resources. I guess all our hard work was for nothing. she said in a joking tone. Don't worry, we'll find a use for your rocket. Leila teased. We prefer not to waste. Ooh, let's stuff that chariot thing with explosives and use it to blow Newtown to pieces. Grindcore suggested with a wide grin. Yep, you're a wrecker, alright. Bulkhead said as he playfully slapped his back, earning chuckles from most of the people and bots present, save for Ultra Magnus who simply shook his head. This Prowl contacting Ultra Magnus. Commander, do you read? The stealthiest Autobot contacted the commander. Go ahead, Prowl. Magnus answered. Sir, Rio and the others are making a break for it. Prowl reported. They tried messing around with the security cameras and might have everyone fooled, but I've got my optics on them. What's their location? Ultra Magnus asked. Rio is heading to the lower levels, Ayano is trying to get to the outside perimeter, and Yukiya is remaining in their room trying to rig some sort of makeshift explosive. Should I move to intercept? Prowl asked. Hold position. Ultra Magnus told him before turning to everyone else. It would seem our newest recruits are trying to abandon us. Commander Magnus, please. Leila stood up immediately. Let me try to talk with them. I brought them here, they're my responsibility. Before the Autobot commander could protest, Lelouch also stood up as he placed his hand on Leila's shoulder. Not alone, you're not. Leila looked to him in surprise. The reason why they are doing this is because they think we don't understand them. But I think I know a way we can change that. The door to the dorm room opened up as the masked Zero and Akito stepped inside, where they saw Yukiya sitting at the far end all alone. Well, hello there, Akito Hyuga, and, guess I lucked out. I even got Zero to witness my final moments. Yukiya said as he showed the trigger in his hand. You rigged yourself with a bomb. Zero noted. Don't know if it can dent that fancy alien armor you got, but I'd say it'd be worth a try. Yukiya smiled. Even if it means ending your life? Akito questioned. Oh, don't give me that. Can you honestly say that you didn't see this coming? Yukiya questioned rhetorically. Your abandoning of the unit through the use of explosives was something that we expected. Zero replied. And I'm sad to say that even I considered the suicide approach. But he might not be too happy about it. He pointed behind him, causing Yukiya to turn around as a shadow loomed over him. His smile faded as he looked in surprise to see Grindcore poking his hand through the window, shattering it and allowing him to speak. Did you seriously climb all the way up here? Yukiya questioned. What? You see how big I am. No way can I squeeze in those tiny hallways. Grindcore told him. Fair enough. Yukiya shrugged. So, you gonna blow yourself up? You crazy man. Grindcore questioned. Why would you do that? Huh, I'm not sure any of you would understand, but I might as well try to tell you. Yukiya took off the glove on his right hand to reveal a large scar between his index and middle fingers, stretching down the back of his hand as well as his palm. What do you think? And I've got plenty more where that came from. Am I correct to assume you got most of them in the ghettos? Zero asked. Bingo. Yukiya confirmed. You've seen all the ghettos in Japan, right? Well, it's basically the same there too. 3 years ago, I lived in the one in Amsterdam. The adults' sense of inferiority and discontent trickled down and affected the youth. The kids took their frustrations out on those that were weaker than them. The Japanese persecuting the Japanese. But I fought back, they deserved to die, so I took them out with a literal bang. I don't give a rat's ass about the Japanese, the 11s, or whatever crusade you guys say you're fighting for. I escaped the ghetto, but in order to avoid the police, I had to stay underground and in the sewers. That's where I met Rio and his gang. For the first time in my life, I had friends I could trust. They're the closest thing I have to family. I know what that's like. Grindcore said. All of that. I used to be a low-ranking gladiator back on Cybertron. Oh, you guys had gladiators, huh? Cool. Yukiya said. Yeah, I got to beat up a lot of big guys. Grindcore continued. But I also got the scrap beaten out of me too. Oh, and I also used to be a Decepticon. So, when I tried to join the bots, they weren't too happy about that. But when I joined the Wreckers, I got myself a band of buddies with me too. Yukiya smirked. What's your name? Call me Grindcore. Well, Grindcore, I guess we do have something in common. Yukiya said. But don't think that means you're gonna change my mind about what I'm about to do. Zero then stepped up. Before you decide to take your own life, would you at least like to see my face? Hey, trying to tempt me with the face of the mysterious and superstitious Zero. What, are you some kind of hot chick that may try to swoon me? Or are you some butt-ugly freak with a scar on his face or something? Why don't you see for yourself? He reached up to remove his mask and reveal his face. Yukiya looked for a moment as he saw the young face, thinking he saw it before but couldn't quite remember. But it clicked a few seconds later as his eyes actually widened, and he almost dropped the trigger in his hands. No freaking way. Lelouch v. Britannia, former prince of the now destroyed Britannian Empire, and current leader of the Black Knights, at your service. He performed a mocking bow to him. It took a few seconds for Yukiya to process it all before he chuckled, which quickly erupted into a full-blown laugh that almost sounded borderline insane. I don't get it. What's so funny? Grindcore asked as Yukiya stopped. Well damn, I honestly didn't see that coming. Yukiya said. So the Britannian prince who practically started it all when he was exiled to Japan is really the masked revolutionary the world swoons over. Now I'm honestly interested, not enough to keep me from killing myself though. If you're going to do it, then just do it. Because it seems like you're more wasting our time than anything. Akito said. Geez, you're a real buzzkill, aren't you Akito? Yukiya told him before looking toward Lelouch again. Who else knows about you? Pretty much everyone. Lelouch replied. Dang, and they're okay with it? Yukiya asked. I've earned their trust. Lelouch answered. It's true. He has. Grindcore said. Alright, if you say so. Yukiya said. But, I just have one last thing before I decide whether or not I blow myself to Kingdom Come. What did you do to Ryo? Care to be more specific? Lelouch requested. Back when we first met, you did something to him. Yukiya began. Something that made him tell you almost everything. The guy might have a big mouth, but he's not the type to spill the beans either. And just like that, he forgot the entire conversation even happened. You obviously did something to him, and I'd like to know what it is. Lelouch honestly smiled before he explained it, even to Akito as well. It's called a Geass. By making direct eye contact with someone, I can have them say or do anything that I ask of them. Once it's done, the individual has no memory of what has transpired, and it can only be used on a person once. So basically mind control. Yukiya summed up. You could call it that. Lelouch confirmed. I see, that's how he did it. Akito narrowed his eyes slightly toward Lelouch but chose to remain silent. Anyone else in the Black Knights have that power? Yukiya asked. Myself, Rai, and Optimus Prime. And the one who gave me this power is also in the Black Knights. Lelouch answered. Well, it all sounds really interesting. So, if you can mind control people, why not use it on me? Yukiya asked. Why not just have me deactivate the bomb and order me to follow you for the rest of my life? I can do that, but I won't. Lelouch answered. I'm not a slaver. I use this power only to procure sensitive information from an enemy. But, I don't think I even have to use it to stop you, because you're not going to kill yourself. You think I'm bluffing? Yukiya questioned, his smile fading as his eyes narrowed. Yes, you are. Lelouch replied without even a hint of hesitation in his voice. You said it yourself that Ryo and Ayano are like family to you. You won't do that to them. Maybe they know I'm planning to sacrifice myself, Yukiya tried. If they did, they would have protested. Lelouch said immediately. You care about them as much as they care about you. They have no idea you were planning to do this, you probably told them you would meet up with them later, and they believed you. Is that really how you want to end this? You might be buying time for them to escape, but you'll just end up hurting them in the process. Yukiya glared before Grindcore spoke. Come on, kiddo. You don't wanna hurt your friends, do you? I know I wouldn't. And hey, if you stick with us, I'll be your friend. Are you trying to mock me or something? Yukiya exclaimed as he turned to Grindcore in a fury but was surprised to see a genuine smile on his face. No, I don't mock people, except maybe the bad guys, but that's beside the point. The real point is, I think you're a good guy who cares about his friends. Grindcore said. And I really like that in someone. So, for your friends' sakes, put down the bomb and give us a chance. Of course, words only carry so much to them. Akito spoke up next. The only way to truly know for sure if this is something worth it, is to come and fight with us. See for yourself, what kind of people each of us are. Yukiya didn't quite know what to say at first, right before he disarmed his own bomb and threw it away. Well, this is sure gonna be one hell of an experience. An elevator door opened as Ryo ran out into what appeared to be a cargo loading bay that would normally have several nightmares, but currently had none, not even the pods. What the? Where the nightmares? Outside. He was shocked as he turned around to see Sideswipe leaning back against the wall, right next to the elevator door. You think you're pretty slick, huh? Well, I'd say I'm just a bit slickier. Slickier? Is that even a real word? Rai asked as he stepped out from around the corner, along with Suzaku. How in the hell did you guys even? Ryo stuttered. To be honest, we were hoping that you would stay of your own accord. Suzaku said. But we expected you would also try to make a break for it. Hope for the best, but be prepared for the worst. Ryo glared. If you think you're gonna try and stop me, you'll try and outrun an Autobot that can transform into a car and move just as fast. Sideswipe asked before transforming and spinning donuts around Ryo for a moment before transforming back to stand in front of him. Yeah, I don't think so. Ryo, please just hear us out. Rai said. Why? I'm a prisoner, aren't I? Just an expendable pawn that you're gonna send into war. Ryo practically spat. Yes, you are technically a prisoner. Suzaku confirmed. But you're not expendable, nobody is. You and your friends have a chance to go into battle, and we'll make sure you come back alive. I'm sorry, Ryo asked. What? You think we're shallow enough to send you guys in as decoys or something? Sideswipe asked. That's why we got the drones. I've seen it myself, you're a badass fighter, so badass I can totally see you running circles around even the cons. And you're about to get that chance. What makes you think I want to fight the Decepticons? Ryo questioned. What makes you think I want to fight for any of you? If you won't do it for us, do it for your friends. Suzaku told him. When we first met, you said you were looking for a place to belong, a place to call home. If you work with us, you'll be able to make that place. And you're not the only one who wants that. Rai added. Countless people, millions, maybe even billions, are about to go through the same thing you are. You say you don't care, but I think you do. We're not going to force you down this path. If you really want to leave, we'll make sure to send you and your friends somewhere that's safe. That took Ryo by surprise. But, I thought we were prisoners. The EU believes you to be prisoners, but we're not with the EU. Sideswipe said. We can just make something up and they won't even bat an eye in the direction we sent you. You'd really do that? Ryo asked. For all three of us. Yes. Suzaku confirmed. It's your choice, Ryo. You and your friends can leave if you want, and we'll make sure you're somewhere safe and the Decepticons won't find you. Or you can work with us to help fix this world and make a place for you to belong, as well as others who need that. He extended his hand to him. So, what's it going to be? Ayano crawled out of the hole from the secret passage within Castle Weisswolf and began to make her way through the woods surrounding the area. There aren't going to be any communication cables out here in the forest. She muttered to herself, when suddenly the vehicle mode of Strongarm drove out to block her path. No, but we have been monitoring you for some time, and have tracked your position here. Strongarm noted as Colin and Leila got out before Strongarm herself transformed. Ayano Kasaka, I highly recommend you return to Castle Weisswolf with us immediately. She was immediately put on the defensive as she glared at them. Or what? You'll kill me right here. No, that's not what we do. Colin stated. We're not going to kill you, but at least just hear us out. We understand why you're doing this. Do you? You think just because we're both Japanese you know what I've gone through in my life? Ayano exclaimed. Yes, I do. Because I know exactly what kind of person you are. Colin stated as she walked closer. I know you try to act like a fierce fighter, unafraid of getting into a fight, when you're really more scared than you think. Shut up. Ayano exclaimed, but Colin kept going as she walked even closer. I know that even though you act unfriendly or hostile, you stick around with your gang because you see them as the only family you have left, because you've lost everyone else. She continued. I said shut up. Ayano shouted, looking like she was about to cry. You lost somebody you loved. Maybe it was a lover, or a parent, or a sibling, or maybe all of the above, and you don't want to run the risk of losing anybody else. Colin continued. I'm serious. Ayano was already in tears. You're acting the way you do because you try to see the worst in everyone, because you're too caught up in your own pain and anger to see there are people who are genuinely trying to help you. I know exactly who you are, Ayano. Because I was just like you. The two remained silent as Colin and Ayano were so close to each other, it was almost as if their faces were touching. Colin's expression remained fierce while Ayano's looked like she was about to break down. Strongarm and Leila remained silent as they waited for someone to speak. If you're the same as me, then tell me what I'm supposed to do. Ayano stuttered as she tried to wipe away her tears. Colin took a breath as she spoke more calmly. You can start by giving us a chance. I don't know exactly what you went through, but maybe I've been there too. Strongarm then walked up. Listen, even if I don't agree with your actions or motives, it is clear to see that you are a capable fighter. With us, we can at least point that capability in a direction where it can do more good than harm. And nobody is going to die in this mission, I'll see to it personally. Leila stated. I'll fight beside you, all of you, and make sure everyone comes home alive. God, I am so bored. Ashley Asura, commander of the Asura force of the Holy Order of Michael, sat on his throne in front of his entire team, and as one might guess, he was not too happy about it. Bored, bored, bored. How long are we going to stay cooped up here in this nasty dump? He slammed his foot on the lion pelt beneath him. Joanne. Why, yes sir. One of his squad members, and arguably the youngest, stepped up. What is it, master? Ashley took out his pistol and dumped all the bullets out of it before loading a single bullet into it. We have some time on our hands. So how would you like to play a game? He spun the barrel of his gun. Tell me something, what's the one thing you need to survive on the battlefield? The skill to win. Joanne guessed. Ashley sighed in disappointment. Come on, surely you can do better than that. He pointed his gun at Joanne, much to his shock, as well as that of his squad before speaking to all of them. Listen closely, you want to know the one thing that's crucial to survival on the battlefield. It's luck. It doesn't matter how skilled you are, or how hard you fight, the fact is if you lose, you die. And why is that? It's because luck wasn't on your side. But not me, I'm very lucky. Would you like a demonstration? Allow me, he pointed his pistol toward his own head, much to everyone's horror. Don't do it, Master Ashley. Please. No. Joanne begged, but Ashley had already pulled the trigger, only for nothing to happen, much to everyone's relief. See, luck's definitely on my side. Ashley said. Oh please. A certain blonde girl in red walked in with an annoyed expression on her face. You think luck is the reason you've made it this far? Give me a break. Oh Luki, Ashura force. Ashley teased. We got ourselves the mighty Uldren Zevon, the strongest of the Glindonites and personal knight to the only Britannian princess left. I'm actually surprised to hear you badmouth luck so much considering luck's on your side too. Really? You think so? Uldren questioned with a slight glare. Yep, you and the rest of the Glindonites, as well as Her Majesty, or all that remains of Britannia, if you don't count Euro-Britannia of course. Ashley said. Everyone else is either dead or enslaved by the giant alien robots we've teamed up with. The only reason you and your friends were able to escape was because luck decided to smile upon you. That earned a glare from Uldren. But it makes me wonder, who is more in luck's favor? Me or you? Why don't we find out? He pointed his gun directly at her. Go ahead and try, Uldren told him, without even a hint of hesitation in her voice. Ashley's wind grin only grew as he slowly pulled the trigger for dramatic effect. However, before he even had the chance to go through with it, Uldren quickly rushed him. She grabbed him by the wrist of the hand holding the gun, twisted it and forced him to drop the gun before spinning him and pinned him to the ground as she kept her knee on his back. Master Ashley, Joanne exclaimed in surprise. Here's some friendly advice, Ashley Asura. Uldren told him as she kept him pinned. If luck really does exist, I don't rely on it, I make my own luck. Maybe you should do the same or your so-called luck might just run out. She let him go and backed away as he pulled himself pee. Ashley scowled slightly as he straightened himself up before it erupted into a chuckle. Well lady, you're even crazier than I am. I like that. Spare me. Uldren's eyelids lowered as she turned to leave. Now come on, get your squad ready. Princess Maribel and Shang are preparing a mission and your team is on deck with us. Finally. Some action, Ashley exclaimed. Does that mean we're playing around with the destroyers of Britannia too? Yes, unfortunately we will be working with the Decepticons. Aldrin commented with a slight glare. Hey, honest question, Ashley said to her. What do you think of this? How do you like the idea of working with the same aliens who all but destroyed your home? I imagine it must be quite frustrating. Aldrin turned around to face him directly. You want my honest opinion? Charles Z. Britannia deserved what he got. Britannia's hypocrisy was among the many things I couldn't stand about it. But, at the same time, I cannot condone the Decepticons slaughtering civilians who don't even know how to defend themselves. So, I hate the very idea of my friends and I working with the Decepticons. But as we stand now, we don't have the means to fight them. You said, now, which means you and little Princess Mary are planning something, huh? Ashley noted with a grin. Well, whatever it is, I want in. Seriously? Aldrin asked. Totally. It sounds like a hell of a fun. Aldrin rolled her eyes in annoyance. You don't understand, not sure if you ever will. Just get your team ready. Aye, Miss Knight. Ashley mocked as Aldrin left. So, we'll be stationed in Sloanham. Toto explained to Maribel, Shin, and Jean on the bridge of the Granbury. There was also a human-sized hologram of Steeljaw present. Though there is a solid defensive line at the border, we can still expect the enemy to slip past the defenses and drop in where we least expect it. The ghost of Hannibal, Shin noted. Or do you suspect it may the Autobots and the Black Knights, as they were capable of the same thing? Unsure. Toto answered. Either way, we should prepare for a battle. They cannot take this city, or the EU will push even further. Either way, this will also allow us to gauge the enemy's strength. Steeljaw noted. So even if the enemy is victorious, we may learn how they are able to fight, and we can find a means to counter their next assault. Now, before we begin, Maribel, a question. What is it? She did her best not to glare at the hologram of the Decepticon. How close were you with Euphemia and Cornelia Lee Britannia? Steeljaw asked, causing Maribel's eyes to narrow even further. What does that have to do with this? Maribel questioned. One of my associates has a certain vendetta with the two princesses, and if you are rather close with them, she may or may not try something with you to make them hurt. Just thought I'd give a friendly warning. Steeljaw said. Noted. Anything else? The red-haired princess asked. No, that is all. Steeljaw replied. Then you are dismissed. Maribel said before the hologram vanished. I apologize, Your Highness. Shin spoke to her. I understand this must be quite difficult for you. Your sympathy, while appreciated, is not wanted. Just stay focused on the task at hand. Maribel said coldly to him. Very well. He and Jean turned to leave, when Maribel suddenly grabbed him by the wrist and glared. You may be the head of the Order of Michael now, but the Glindonites are my soldiers. If anything happens to them, it's on you. Jean was about to reach for her weapon when Shin held out his hand to keep her from acting out. No harm will come to your compatriots, I give you my word. At least not by my hand, I make no promises for the enemy. Maribel said nothing for a few moments before finally letting go, allowing Shin and Jean to leave. Once they were gone, Toto approached her. Are you alright, Mary? I don't trust him, she confessed. I knew Manfredi, he was a good man and an even better soldier. There is no way he took his own life. Even if the Decepticons were to get involved, he would fight to the last on the battlefield and not take the coward's way out. You don't think Shang? Toto wondered, feeling incredibly nervous. I don't have any proof, but I don't trust that man at all. Maribel said. Just be careful and tell the others to do the same. All right. Toto nodded. Just outside the Euro-Britannian city of Sloanham, a single ground bridge portal opened up as multiple entities emerged. First was a dozen orange Alexander drones followed by the real soldiers. The Autobots consisting of Ultra Magnus, Elita 1, Bumblebee, RC, Bulkhead, Smokescreen, Prowl, Grindcore, Sideswipe, Strongarm, and Jetfire. The Black Knights consisting of Zero, Colin, Suzaku, Rai, Orpheus, Sarah, Gino, and Monica, each in their respective nightmares. Gino was given a new nightmare that strongly resembled his old Tristian, the Tristian Divider. Finally, the 5 units of the WZERO stepped out, each in their own custom Alexanders. Everyone present and accounted for. Zero asked as every bot and human gave a signal or some kind of sign to show they were alright, save for Ayano, as her only sign was the sound of her vomiting in her own cockpit, causing everyone to wince. Ayano, are you okay? Colin asked. She'll be fine. She's got motion sickness. Ryo summed up. Yesh, Rai winced. You're gonna have to get used to it, we use ground bridges quite frequently. God help me, Ayano muttered as she wiped her face. Alright, everyone knows the plan. Magnus got everyone's attention. The drones will enter the city first and draw out the enemy. All assigned units will operate in their respective teams of 2 or 3 and encircle the perimeter, but do not enter the city until the enemy forces reveal themselves. Jetfire, you take to the skies. Elita 1 instructed. But do not take down those turrets until after the fighting here begins. The element of surprise is crucial. Acknowledged. Jetfire nodded before transforming into his jet mode and flew off. Everyone, move out. We don't know what we're dealing with, so nobody goes anywhere alone. Zero instructed. The drones were the first to enter the city as the large group of Autobots and pilots split apart. The bots transformed into their respective vehicle modes while the nightmares rolled along the ground, save for the Alexanders that crawled in their insect mods. They split up into 2 larger groups to encircle the perimeter from both sides before slowly splitting off with their assigned teams. One team consisted of Zero, Bumblebee, and Sarah, the second was Akito, Leila, and Elita 1, the third was a 2-woman team of Colin and RC, the fourth team was of Bulkhead and Rai, the fifth was of Ultra Magnus and Suzaku, the sixth team consisted of Prowl, Orpheus, and Monica, the 7th team had Gino and Smokescreen, the 8th team Ryo and Sideswipe, the 9th team consisted of Yukiya and Grindcore, and the final team was of Ayano and Strongarm. Castle Weisswolf, Control Center. 0 to control, all units have encircled the perimeter. The leader of the Black Knights made contact. Acknowledged. Claus said as the WZERO staff continued to work and observe with Euphemia standing right by his side. Drones are entering the city limits. Nothing to report so far. They all saw from several screens what the drones were seeing as they entered the empty city. All the staff, including Anna, as well as all the scientists present began to make the same report, no movement or enemy units detected. Yuffie observed as she had a sinking feeling in her stomach that something wasn't right here. It's too quiet, she spoke. Got that right. Claus agreed as he took a swig of his flask before handing to her. Thirsty. I promise I don't have backwash. No thanks, I don't drink alcohol. Yuffie said. Your loss. He took another swig. Suddenly, an alarm sounded. One of the drones just went offline. That got their attention as other alerts came in. We just lost 3 more drones, no, make that 5. Well, that was fast. Claus commented. Try to bring up visual feed of all those that went offline. Yuffie stated. Already on it. Anna brought up the feed from all the drones that had been destroyed, which was now at 8 total and climbing. Several screens popped up to show the last thing the drones saw before going offline. Several all appeared to be shot by something that couldn't be seen, but Euphemia noticed something with one of them. Focus on screen 3, please. She requested. Said screen was enlarged and enhanced to show the blurry but unmistakable figure of a Viacon trooper blasting at the drone. Well, those must be Decepticons. Claus said nonchalantly as Yuffie contacted their team. 0. Commander Magnus. Everyone. There are Decepticons in the city. Repeat, the Decepticons are in the city. Roger that. All units, move in. 0 acknowledged. Jetfire, begin your attack now. Elita 1 ordered as the Arielbot's vehicle mode shot through the sky and straight toward the field of massive long-ranged weapons along the border. Affirmative. Jetfire relayed as he fired a series of missiles and the closest set of turrets, already setting it ablaze. First target neutralized. Now maybe I can. He gave a sudden cry as he just barely avoided the hadron blasts of a massive red Britannian aircraft carrier with a certain Sharkticon standing at the top. Hey there. It's Jetfire, right? Skybite greeted. The Autobot transformed and hovered in the air briefly. Jetfire to ground forces, Britannian units are aiding the Decepticons. Be on guard. Oh, why did you have to spoil the surprise? Skybite stated. But I guess they probably expected that. Now then, why don't we begin our little duel in the sky, shall we? He transformed into his flying shark mode and shoot directly at Jetfire, who transformed into his jet mode to fly away and gain some distance with Skybite in pursuit. This is the Granberry to all units. Toto contacted her team and allies as she worked on the bridge of the Britannian aircraft. The Autobots and most likely the Black Knights are here. Zero, watch out. Bumblebee quickly transformed and blocked the path of the Shinkiro and Pink Akatsuki as rapid-fire bullets were shot in their direction from the top of the building. Overlooking the team was none other than Steeljaw, and what appeared to be a red and gold-colored version of the Lancelot. "Ah, so that's Zero," the wolf-like Decepticon said casually. "A pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard of you. It's Steeljaw, right?" Lelouch glared. "Zero," Maribel spoke in a low growl from her nightmare, the Lancelot trial. The one who incited one of the worst rebellions in Britannian history. "Well, I'll make sure that you're brought to justice." She was the first to attack as the Lancelot trial shot down from the rooftop, straight toward the Shinkiro, but the Black Nightmare suddenly activated its shield system to block the sword strike from the red Lancelot, allowing the Pink Akatsuki to come in with its katana and lock weapons. "Don't even think about it." Sarah glared as she pressed further. Maribel, Lelouch honestly did not expect to see his half-sister this soon. There was some mixed feelings about fighting her. While he wasn't as close with her as he was with Euphemia or Cornelia, he still cared about her. But he would also stand his ground. "Don't get distracted." Steeljaw pounced toward the Shinkiro, but the Black Nightmare leapt back just as he landed and fired its central laser at him. But Steeljaw proved quick enough to dodge, but not quick enough to avoid getting tackled by Bumblebee. Elita 1 and Akito leapt in front of the Alexander piloted by Leila as their path was blocked by none other than Ashley in his red custom Gloucester, with similarly colored white and red Gloucesters piloted by 3 other members of the Asura strike force. "Aha!" Ashley laughed. "I got the ghost of Hannibal and a freaking Autobot to boot. Luck really is on my side today. Stay behind us, Commander." Akito told Leila as Elita was the first to attack, firing a series of energon blasts, forcing the 4 nightmares to roll around and avoid the laser fire. But Ashley actually pressed forward, drew one of his nightmares' swords and slashed toward Elita, who blocked the strike with her arm blade. "Ooh, you're a lady Autobot, huh?" Ashley smirked. "Shall we have this dance? You're not my type." Elita glared before kicking the red Gloucester back. Colin and RC were in the middle of the streets as they heard a drilling-like sound from underground. The Gurren's system immediately went on alert. "RC, move out of the way," Colin exclaimed as the Gurren and the blue Autobot just barely dodged the exploding ground as a certain spider-like con emerged with a mixed look of a glare and smirk. "Ah, if it isn't my favorite girls. RC and Colin." "Arachnid." RC glared. "Miss me." Arachnid smiled. "Like dogshit on my shoe." Colin glared back. "This time, you're not getting away. If that's how you want to play it," Arachnid said as 2 large Insecticons suddenly burst out of the ground to help surround the pair. "Scrap." Colin and RC both cursed. Ultra Magnus drove to a halt as he transformed from his vehicle mode to his robot form as he and the Lancelot came face to face with the recognizable Decepticon named Thunderhoof, as well as a massive gold nightmare that took the form identical to a centaur, which wielded a massive axe-like weapon composed of several gears. Right by its side was a smaller silver nightmare resembling something of a knight. Yo, it's the second biggest bot around and one of his little meatbag playmates," Thunderhoof exclaimed. "Thunderhoof." Ultra Magnus glared. "And it would seem you have allies as well." "Well, this is quite interesting," Shin said from within the Vercingetorix. "Not only do I find the Autobots, but even the controversial Suzaku Kururugi." "That is you, isn't Mr. Kururugi? The Lancelot is a rather unmistakable nightmare." "And who are you?" Suzaku asked with narrowed eyes. "Oh, my apologies. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Shin Hyuga Shang, Knight of Euro-Britannia and Grand Master of the Order of Michael. The one beside me is my personal knight, Jean Ro." He gestured to the smaller Grachus next to him. "Did he say Hyuga? Isn't that Akito's last name?" Suzaku thought in surprise. "Well, Shang, allow me to keep this brief." Ultra Magnus aimed his ion blaster. "Surrender now, and your forces will not be harmed." "Tempting, but I'll have to decline." Shin shot his Vercingetorix faster than Magnus anticipated, knocking him back with a slice of his overly complicated axe before giving pursuit. Magnus! Suzaku exclaimed. You should worry about yourself. Jean told him as she shot her Grachus at him, both its swords drawn as the Lancelot drew its own MVS to block the attack, which also left him open for Thunderhoof to charge and ram the Lancelot with his antlers. Orpheus grunted as his Byakuin rolled back to avoid the gunfire from the Lancelot Grail, a red version of the Lancelot with a plethora of swords on its back. The Florence Nero and Prowl quickly came to his aid, pushing the Lancelot Grail back as a group of 3 Viacons along with 2 white and red Gloucesters piloted by the order of Michael provided some backup. Isn't the Lancelot? Prowl questioned. Looks like a remolded version. Orpheus commented as Monica eyed it with curiosity. Hold on, Uldren, the pilot of the Lancelot Grail, eyed the Florence Nero with suspicion before her eyes widened. You, in the Black Nightmare. Identify yourself. Monica gasped as she recognized that voice. Uldren Zevon. That got the attention of both Prowl and Orpheus. Both of them knew who she was, the head knight of the Glindonites and personal guard to Princess Maribel, as well as the supposed head of the Zevon family before Oegros took over. Orpheus was also well aware she was his twin sister, but he never knew her personally, so there wasn't much emotion behind this. I know that voice, Lady Kruszewski. Knight of 12. You're with the Black Knights. Uldren exclaimed in shock. And you're siding with the Decepticons. Monica narrowed. The same monsters that destroyed our home. Uldren clenched the controls of her nightmare. Not my choice. Not my call. Then I believe this conversation is over. Prowl stated as he threw a series of shurikens at the enemy. Bulkhead and the Raiden had rolled back and ended up regrouping with Gino and Smokescreen, the 2 bots and 2 nightmares circling up in a 4-way back-to-back style, surrounded by 7 Viacons, 2 red and white Gloucesters piloted by the Asura Force members, and a red and black heavily armored nightmare that strongly resembled the Mordred. Despite that, Rai and the 2 Autobots present were more than ready to throw down. Bring it on, boys. Bring it on. Bulkhead readied his mace. Guys, hang on, I know these folks. Gino exclaimed. They're from the Order of Michael, Euro-Britannian. And the big one is called a Zetland, it's piloted by one of the Glindonites. Gino Weinberg. The Knight of 3. Tink Lockhart looked in surprise. What are you doing here? I thought you were captured by the Decepticons. I'm a Black Knight now, they and the bots rescued me. Gino said. Come on man, we don't know each other that much, but I know you're a good guy. You don't have to fight us. Sorry, but I have my orders. Tink said with reluctance. I won't kill any of you, I'm not that heartless. But I won't let you do this either. Just following orders, huh? Smokescreen said with a slight glare. So you probably won't take it personal when we wipe the floor with you. He opened fire with his Energon blasters. Yukiya pulled back his Alexander as fast as he could through an alleyway, right before the 2 buildings were blasted apart by the massive Decepticon that literally bit its way through, devouring everything in sight. Come on. You ain't even gonna be a snack for old Underbite. He leapt toward him as the Yukiya's Alexander scaled a small building. Underbite was about to chomp through that building too before Grindcore came in and slammed his shoulder into the side of the Decepticon, sending him skidding along the street. Hey, aren't you that con who ate that city? Grindcore asked. Finally. What gave me away? The muscles. He flexed his arms with pride. Grindcore smirked. The smell. That earned a growl, followed by a roar from Underbite, who charged at Grindcore. The Autobot stopped him in his tracks, holding his jaw shut as the large Decepticon tried to push him back, but Grindcore stood his ground. Yeah, that's it. Yukiya smirked as his Alexander found a good vantage point, aiming its long-ranged weapon toward Underbite's eye. Hold M right there, big guy. His Alexander sounded an alarm just in time as he leapt his nightmare from the rooftop just in time to avoid the gunfire from the red, orange, and yellow nightmare known as the Bradford. Sorry, no sniping for you today. Leonhardt said as he went on the attack. Rio's Alexander and Sideswipe drove down one road to arrive in an intersection where they met with Strongarm and Ayano's Alexander. All 4 transformed into their respective robot modes as the vehicle mode of Fracture appeared before he deployed his mini-cons, Air Razor and Dive Bomb, while also arriving with Quillfire, another Bradford Nightmare, and a white and red variation of the Vincent called the Vincent Graham. Both were piloted by Marika and Sokia respectively. "Well, looks like we got ourselves a showdown, huh?" Sideswipe said with a nervous grin. "So, you guys are Decepticons?" Rio said to Fracture and Quillfire specifically. "I thought you'd be bigger." He grinned. "You won't be saying that for long, meatbag." Fracture drew his blade before going on the attack. "All units have engaged the enemy. We have confirmation of Decepticons and Britannian nightmares working together." A hole was punched in the long-range defenses, but not enough to push through. Yuffie looked with intense worry as she heard Anna and everyone else voice the multiple alerts they were getting. She happened to glance towards Claus, hoping he would have something to say. "Hey, nothing we can do about it now," Claus commented. "I know that sounds kinda careless, but it's the truth. You and I aren't fighters, but if you want to make contact and voice some kind of encouragement, go right ahead." "No, it's alright," Yuffie said with reluctant acceptance. "I know I'm no warrior, I can't fight. In the Black Knights, all I can really do is negotiate and help plan strategy, maybe even provide moral support and intelligence. But I'm alright with that." A smile formed on her face. "Because I know they'll pull through this. I've seen each of them come out of much worse than this and still win. I have faith in each and every one of them. They'll win, I know it." Claus chuckled. "Faith, huh? You sure you're Britannian royalty?" Yuffie gave a slight half-smirk back. Back on the battlefield, Colin threw her Gurren Surger claw into the face of one Insecticon before activating it. The entire body of the Insecticon began to glow red as it cried out in agony before exploding in glorious fashion. She then shot her Gurren into the air to avoid the laser fire of the second Insecticon that flew and shot at her in its Herculean beetle mode. Meanwhile, RC and Arachnid glared at one another as they faced off on a rooftop. RC made the first move, firing her Energon blasters at Arachnid, who leapt back before returning fire from her single palm. She also detached her hooked hand, letting the chain extend before she threw it out toward RC, who used her arm blades to block and parry the attack before rushing Arachnid to tackle her off the rooftop and down onto the ground. Bumblebee drew his katana to block the claw strikes from Steeljaw before striking with said katana, using only one hand to hold it, which Steeljaw caught it in between his claws, but this left him open for Bumblebee to deck him across the face, followed by a kick to the chest to knock him down. The Shinkiro fired its Hadron cannon straight toward the Lancelot Trial, which maneuvered swiftly away to avoid the blasts before zooming in to close the gap, trying to bring down one of its dual MVS swords toward him, but the Shinkiro blocked the attack with a transformable blade of its own from its right arm. Chera's pink Akatsuki tried to attack Maribel's Nightmare from behind, but she brought her second MVS blade to block the katana before flying straight up. "She's pretty good," Sarah commented. "There's a reason the Glinda Knights were so revered," Lelouch said. "I'm actually somewhat relieved she didn't come to Japan when this whole thing started." The Lancelot Trial drew its Varus rifle and prepared to fire, but gunfire from the side forced Maribel to fly away and deviate course. The one who shot at her was none other than the Alexander piloted by Leila. She quickly moved in to shoot at Steeljaw as well and force him from Bumblebee. "Is everyone alright?" she asked. "Where's your team?" Lelouch questioned. "Akito and Alita." As if on cue, an explosion from a nearby building erupted as Alita 1 slid back using her arm blade to block the sword slice from one white and red Gloucester before using her Energon blaster in her other hand to blast off its feet and cripple it, which was enough to allow Ashley to zoom in close and bring his right blade toward her, forcing her to block as they engaged in a brutal sword fight. "You're not getting away from me," Ashley exclaimed as they continued to clash blades. At the same time, Akito's Alexander scurried onto the scene with two more Gloucesters behind him, which Bumblebee shooted with his Energon blasters as they tried to find cover. Lelouch and Sarah were about to provide backup as Maribel's Lancelot Trial returned, just as Akito gunned straight for Steeljaw. "The ghost of Hannibal, I presume," Steeljaw mused as he used his claws to parry the rapid tonfa strikes from Akito, who began to move in like a rabid beast. "Die." This was heard in not only Leila's communication, but even that of her current teammates as Lelouch, Sarah, Bumblebee, and even Alita gave a glance in concern. "Die, die." Sarah gave a gasp as she felt a throb in her forehead, even Lelouch and Maribel stopped piloting for a brief second as they each felt something in their heads, almost as if they could hear Akito's voice in their heads. What? Lelouch questioned. Was that? Maribel also questioned, unbeknownst to her as a Geass sigil formed in her left eye, even though she hadn't activated it of her own accord, same with Lelouch. Die! Akito shouted, a pair of red rings in his eyes as he pushed further against Steeljaw, forcing the Decepticon on the defensive. Steeljaw's smirk was wiped off his face as Akito slammed his Alexander's tonfa in his face before spinning a kick to knock him back. Akito's Alexander stopped as it roared into the air. For the revolution, Quillfire exclaimed as he shot a multitude of quills toward the speeding Alexander piloted by Ayano, her own eyes glowing as a red ring formed in both of them. Die! She shouted as she expertly maneuvered her Alexander around each quill, coming in close to slice at Quillfire with her nightmare's blade with such ferocity, it instantly made him terrified. Demon! Demon! Quillfire exclaimed as he transformed to drive away and get some distance with Ayano shooting after him like a predator chasing its prey. Hey, where are you going? Fracture exclaimed as he also found himself on the defensive from the rapid slashes of the axe wielded by Ryo's Alexander, a pair of red rings in both his eyes as well. Die! Ryo screamed as he attacked just as viciously. Fracture couldn't even find an opening as his arm blade was broken off and he was knocked back. Oh, screw this. The Decepticon bounty hunter shouted as he transformed. Air Razor, Dive Bomb, let's go. He called back his mini-cons, who were busy avoiding the laser fire from Strongarm's crossbow. They did as instructed, transforming into rockets as they reattached to Fracture, who drove away with Quillfire. Hey, get back here, Strongarm shouted. At the same time, Sideswipe was on the defensive from MVS knives of the Vincent Graham, and the dual-armed spear of the Bradford. He swung his blade back to get some distance, but before he could even press on, Ayano and Ryo's Alexanders came in to attack Marika and Sokia respectively. Die! They both shouted at the same time. What the? Sokia questioned as she was taken by such surprise that Ryo's axe cleaved through her Vincent's left hand. Even Marika was knocked back into a building by Ayano, while she flew straight up to get some distance. Both Strongarm and Sideswipe observed this new ferocity with surprise and even shock. They weren't this crazy in the sparring drills, were they? Sideswipe asked. No, definitely not. Strongarm confirmed. Grindcore continued to wrestle with Underbite as the Decepticon threw his face upward to throw off Grindcore and send him rolling down the streets, but before the green Autobot could even retaliate, he was struck in the back by the flying and smoking projectile that was the Bradford piloted by Leonhardt. Hey, watch where you're flying, meatbag. Underbite exclaimed as he shoved the Bradford off. Move out of the way. Now, Leonhardt exclaimed, but it was too late. Both the Nightmare and Decepticon were shot all over the place by the rapid fire and explosive shots from Yukia's Alexander. Die! He shouted, a red ring in his eyes. He fired again as the Bradford flew into the air, while Underbite was blasted all over, forcing him to transform and drive away as Yukia continued to shoot in both their directions. Grindcore heard it through his comms and was more than a little concerned. What the heck? Rice suddenly held his face as his own Geass emblem began to shine in both his eyes, even though he didn't activate it on purpose. What is? This left the Raiden vulnerable to get blasted by a pair of Viacon troopers and knocked down. They were, in turn, smashed by the charging bulkhead as he quickly ran to help the Blue Nightmare stand up. Rai, get your head in the game. Bulk, something's wrong. My Geass, Rai tried to say. What? Bulkhead questioned as they heard the sounds of fighting around them. Smokescreen ducked under the sword slice from one Gloucester before punching it down. He swerved back to avoid the sword slice from the second as he fired an energon blast towards its head and disable it. At the same time, the Tristian divider was in the air as it avoided the massive Hadron blast shot at him by the Zetland. Tink, come on, you don't have to do this, man. Gino tried to plead with him. I'm sorry, I can't do that, Tink stated as he fired his Hadron blast yet again. Orpheus' eyes began to burn slightly as the Geass sigil manifested in both his eyes. What? He was then brought back to reality as Uldren's Lancelot Grail brought down two of its blades toward him. Acting on instinct, Orpheus Byakuan threw out its electromagnetic gun barrel device to block and obliterate both swords, forcing Uldren to pull her Lancelot Grail back as it drew 2 more blades, pushing forward against him. Monica slid under the fire of 2 Viacons before her Florence Nero drew its MVS blade to decapitate both of them in one strike. 2 Gloucesters attempted to attack from behind, but Prowl suddenly appeared as he threw his shurikens to swipe the swords out of their hands. They attempted to retaliate, but Prowl swiftly delivered a crushing kick to the right leg of one and cripple it before maneuvering behind the second to deal a neck chop and disable it as well. They both heard the distressed cries of Orpheus as his Byakuin was knocked back with a sword slice from Uldren. "I've got you now." She was about to bring her blades down toward him before Monica's Florence appeared and blocked it. "Khrushchevsky. Uldren, listen to me. You don't have to do this." Monica tried to reason with her. "Guys, Prowl, Monica," Orpheus tried to speak as he felt the burning sensation of his Geass. "Something's wrong here." Ultra Magnus rolled back as he shoot his ion blaster toward the charging Vercingetorix, with Shin being quick enough to avoid most of the blasts as he got in close to bring down his axe, but Magnus caught it by the handle with both his hands as he pressed back. But the Vercingetorix converted itself so that its centaur-like legs merged into 2 humanoid ones, allowing it to stand taller and catching Magnus off guard as it fired its wrist-mounted Harkens at Magnus' chest to knock him back. But he quickly drew his Energon hammer to slam it into the Vercingetorix's side and knock it back slightly before getting up and resuming the fight. Suzaku, meanwhile, was on the defensive end of both Thunderhoof and the Grachus piloted by Jean. She attacked with such grace and agility, matching even his with the Lancelot. Despite it being a superior nightmare, it was clear she knew what she was doing as well. Yet, conversely, Thunderhoof also attacked with ferocity and rage rather than grace. As the Lancelot and Grachus parried blades up front, Thunderhoof attempted to ram from behind, but Suzaku anticipated this as he shot the Lancelot upward, allowing Thunderhoof to accidentally ram into Jean's nightmare, knocking them both back. The Vercingetorix got back up as it faced Ultra Magnus again. "Your name is Ultra Magnus, correct? I've been told that you are the Autobot second in command, and I can see you've earned that position. It makes me wonder how your leader would compare. You can save your empty flattery, I'm not interested," Magnus said. "No, but I'm interested in something else." A Geass sigil manifested in Shin's left eye. "Yes, he's close. Oh, and he's not the only one, is he? There are others here. Others like me." A sadistic smile fell on his face. "I'm afraid we'll have to call this a draw for now, Ultra Magnus. Jean, Thunderhoof, fall back for now." "What? Are you kidding me?" Thunderhoof exclaimed. "You heard Lord Hyuga. Retreat," Jean exclaimed as her nightmare rolled back to catch up with the retreating Vercingetorix. Thunderhoof growled before he transformed and was forced to retreat as well. "What was that all about?" Suzaku asked as the Lancelot regrouped with Ultra Magnus. "I do not know, and that is what concerns me," Magnus said with a serious expression. Meanwhile, as Bumblebee, Alita, the Shinkiro, and Pink Akatsuki formed a perimeter around Leila's Alexander, who helped to provide covering fire on her own, their respective forms of long-ranged firepower was enough to keep Maribel at bay, along with Ashley and their remaining Asura forces. Of course, most of them were drawn to Akito, who continued to engage Steeljaw in a ferocious battle. Akito's Alexander continued to crawl along the side of a building before leaping directly toward Steeljaw, who grabbed the Alexander before throwing it over him, but Akito recovered quickly enough to slam his tonfa repeatedly at him, forcing Steeljaw to block and parry with his claws. Even he was starting to become concerned right now. "What in the name of Cybertron are you?" Steeljaw questioned as he transformed to retreat, with Akito giving pursuit. "Akito," Leila called to him. "Where's he going?" Bumblebee exclaimed. Maribel continued to feel the burning Geass in her eyes as she saw Akito tail off after Steeljaw. She didn't know what was going on, but suspected the ghost of Hannibal was someone involved. "Ashura, fall back," Maribel ordered. "You crazy. This is the most fun I've ever had," Ashley exclaimed as he gunned for Alita again, only for Alita to block his sword strike while the Shinkiro shot its Harkens at him, forcing Ashley to fall back and avoid getting skewered. "That is an order. Retreat now," Maribel exclaimed. Ashley scowled. "Fine. Asura force, fall back." He drove back with his remaining forces while Maribel flew away with him. "They're retreating?" Alita questioned. "No, something else," Sarah said as she continued to feel the throb in her forehead. Akito, he's under the effect of a Geass. What? Lelouch and Leila both exclaimed as even Bumblebee looked stunned. I don't know how, but somehow it's also connecting to Ryo, Yukiya, and Ayano. Sarah reported. They're all acting like rabid animals now. Lelouch immediately contacted some of his allies. Sideswipe, Strongarm, Grindcore, report. What is the status of your partners? They've gone off the rails. Sideswipe exclaimed. They are acting like monsters. They're not trying to stop our enemies, but actually trying to murder them. Strongarm reported. The kid's kinda scaring me right now. Grindcore also reported. What can we do? Leila asked with worry. Sarah, can you do something? I think I can stop this if I make direct contact with Akito, but I don't know if he'll let me when he's like this. Sarah said. I don't think our enemies will just sit by and wait either. Alita said. Maybe we can use this. Lelouch said as an idea came to mind. He contacted all his forces. This is zero to all Black Knights and Autobots in the area. There is something that is compelling Akito and the rest of the WZERO, excluding Leila, into attacking like beasts. It may or may not have to do with a Geass, but we'll resolve that later. For now, regroup at these coordinates I'm sending you. Are we retreating? Colin asked. No. Lelouch began to explain. The enemy has already noticed this and are likely planning on regrouping as well. They might try to overwhelm Akito and the others with raw firepower. Once they're all gathered in one spot, we'll blast with long-range weapons and punch a hole, allowing Akito and the others to finish them off. I know this might sound unethical, but we don't have a choice. This is the only way to save our allies, complete the mission, and figure out what's going on. All units fall back to these coordinates now. Understood. Acknowledged. Roger. You got it. Those were several of the responses his Autobot and Black Knight allies gave him, including the team he was currently with. Leila, I promise we will save them. But you have to trust me now. Lelouch told her as he could practically feel her own hesitance. I trust you, Lelouch. I don't like it, but I trust you. Let's go. She nodded with acceptance as Bumblebee transformed with Alita before following Lelouch, Sarah, and Leila's nightmares to the coordinates assigned. Akito, I'll save you. Whatever's happening to you, I promise I will save you no matter what. Leila thought to herself as a blue Geass sigil manifested in her left eye. Meanwhile, Jetfire continued to engage in his dogfight with Skybite, who opened his mouth to fire 2 missiles at him, which Jetfire retaliated with by rapid-fire energon blasts in his jet mode. The missiles were promptly intercepted and exploded on contact, but this also proved to be a mistake as he was barely able to avoid the missile barrage shot at him by the Granberry. I can't keep this up much longer. I have to take down those remaining turrets. Jetfire thought to himself as he shoot down toward the ground with Skybite in pursuit, as well as the Granberry locking onto his position. I'm taking a big risk by doing this, but I don't have a choice. He flew closer toward the ground as he spun his body around, firing a volley of missiles just as Skybite unleashed another set of his own missiles, followed by another volley from the Granberry. Jetfire allowed all the missiles behind him to track him as he zoomed forward, diving closer toward the large turrets, and allowing his own missiles to mix in with that of the enemies and strike each of the large turrets he passed through. This resulted in a long line of explosions that took out most if not all the remaining defenses that prevented the EU forces from advancing. "Aw scrap," Skybite cursed. Even Toto winced from onboard, realizing what they had just done. But suddenly, she was contacted by her princess. "Toto, bring the Granberry to my coordinates as soon as possible. We may need an immediate extraction." "I'm on my way," she said with a serious expression. Meanwhile, the remaining enemy forces consisting of Steeljaw, Arachnid, Underbite, Fracture, Quillfire, Maribel, Uldren, Sokia, Tink, Leonhardt, Marika, Ashley, and 3 Gloucesters of the Ashura Strike Force, as well as 3 remaining Viacons, all regrouped near the town square. "All right, everyone listen up," Steeljaw told the group. "Some of you may have noticed how 4 of their own may have lost their sanity and have become something truly dangerous. They're going to converge here, we'll draw them in and overwhelm them with everything we have. Once that's all done, we'll finish off the remaining enemy. Here they come," Uldren warned as they all spotted 4 Alexanders coming at them from the distance down a single road. "Die, die, 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 All four of them chanted repeatedly. All units, be ready to open fire. Every Decepticon and Britannian nightmare readied their respective blasters, Harkins, and other long-ranged weapons. However, Maribel noticed something. Where are the others? Zero and the Autobots. She thought in confusion. Is this their doing? I don't think so, it seems like they don't know what's going on either. So are they hanging back or? Her eyes widened as she realized what was going on. We have to get out of here. Now, Maribel screamed, but it was too late. From the sky above, the Shinkiro fired its central chest laser, which was added by a surged sphere of radiation from the Gurren's Surger Claw, a powerful bolt of electricity from the Raiden's own claw, bolts of energy from the Lancelot's energy wing system, and a blast from the Tristian Divider's Harken combiner, and a blast from the Florence's Hadron cannons. From the rooftops, Ultra Magnus, Elita 1, Bumblebee, Bulkhead, RC, and Strongarm fired charged energon shots from their blasters while Grindcore, the Byakuan, Prowl, and Leila's Alexander just watched as all the attacks converged onto a single point in front of the enemy group. Boom! Asterisk. A massive explosion erupted from the center of the city like a miniature mushroom could. Several of the nightmares were crippled as the Decepticons were all blown away and tried to recover. However, this all left them vulnerable for Akito and his group to swoop in and begin their ferocious attack. Die! Akito shouted as he crushed one of the Gloucesters. Die! Ryo decapitated two Viacons. Die! Ayano screamed as she impaled Fracture in his shoulder and kicked him away, while twisting her blade to completely sever his arm. Die! Yukiya practically unloaded his rifle to take out anyone who attempted to retreat, which ended up crippling the Lancelot Trial. Maribel! Aldrin exclaimed in shock as she flew down to catch her. Glinda Knights, fall back now. Everyone retreat. They did as they were instructed. Tink, Leonhardt, Marika, and Sokia practically limped away in their respective nightmare, using the smoke for cover as the injured Fracture, Underbite, Quillfire, and even Arachnid transformed and scattered, with the later drilling underground. They're demons. Demons I tell you. Quillfire ranted as he drove away. This left only Ashley as his Gloucester appeared to be the only remaining nightmare, which would soon be attacked by the raging Akito. Die! Both nightmares parried their weapons again as Ashley was forced to back away and gain some distance. They're wrong about you. You're not a ghost, you're some kind of monster. He exclaimed as her rolled his red Gloucester away with Akito continuing to give pursuit. Steeljaw limped his way through the alley, cursing himself for his lack of forethought. How could he not have seen such a flawed defensive strategy? But then again, this did match the kind of strategy he heard Zero would normally employ. As he made his way toward a clearing, he noticed Ashley's Gloucester was on its last legs as Akito's Alexander had him cornered. Die! Die! Akito shouted as he beat away the swords from the Gloucester's grip and knocked him down. The Alexander thrusted its hidden blade, ready to end Ashley right then and there. Die! Suddenly, a single white Gloucester arrived to take the blow, the blade piercing through its cockpit and the pilot inside. The pilot in question was the young Joanne. Ashley looked in absolute shock, his pupils shaking as he could not believe what he just saw. His own subordinate just took the blow for him. No, Joanne. Good luck to you, Master, Ashley, those were his last words before he passed on. This was it. It was no or never. With Akito's Alexander no longer moving, Chera's pink Akatsuki shot forward and gunned straight for the Alexander. No time to stop moving, she opened the cockpit and timed it just right as she jumped out of the moving nightmare, which ended up crashing into a building, but it could be repaired. Sarah landed on Akito's cockpit and placed her hand directly on it. Akito! Stop! Sarah exclaimed, channeling her own power as the Geass emblem on her forehead began to glow brightly. Akito gave a gasp as he felt something practically pull him out of his state. The very same thing was felt by Ryo, Ayano, and Yukiya, all of them gasping. Sarah did all she could to not only halt the rampage, but even attempted to rid the effect of the Geass entirely. Time to end this. However, she soon felt a stronger influence inside the effect of the Geass itself, something that caused her to gasp as she felt her conscious being forcibly pulled from reality. Sarah gave a gasp as she found herself in a completely different setting than where she was just a few seconds ago. No longer was she in the city of Slonim standing on top of a nightmare, but she was inside a small room filled with a large assortment of dead bodies, something that made her look more than a little disturbed. What is this? Big brother. She heard a young squeaky voice as she saw a toddler, probably 2 or 3 years old, stand up in the middle of the floor. Aikido. Sarah then turned to see a boy who was probably just becoming a teenager looking toward the toddler she now recognized as Aikido in shock. Why are you still alive? Sarah looked in surprise, as the toddler simply looked to his older brother who then smiled malevolently. Sarah gasped as she saw the Geass emblem form in his left eye. Aikido, die now. The second she saw the sigil, it flew into her eyes as the entire setting around her was suddenly set ablaze with blood-red fire, causing Sarah to look around in a startle. Soon, the flames took shape and manifested in the form of a skull with the glowing red Geass emblem on its forehead. Looking into the eyes of the skull was like looking into an empty pit, but she couldn't help but find herself staring deeper into the eyes. Not long, she did see something into the empty eyes, a bright surge of dark purple energy. Sarah then screamed as she saw in the center of that energy, a stone face with glowing eyes that seemed to embody pure and unrelenting evil. The immortal girl gave a gasp as she fell backwards off the Alexander, falling flat on the ground just as Aikido himself seemed to snap out of his stupor. What just happened? He honestly had no idea what had transpired as he saw the impaled Gloucester in front of him, as well as the crippled one right behind it. Aikido. Aikido. He heard Leila's voice call to him as her Alexander suddenly arrived, alongside the Shinkiro, the Raiden, and even the Byakuan. Sarah. Lelouch saw the green-haired woman lying flat on the ground. Hang on, we have incoming. Rai exclaimed in alert as they saw the golden nightmare known as the Vercingetorix arrive on the scene and come to a halt before Aikido's Alexander. The Shinkiro, Raiden, and Byakuan immediately raised their weapons toward it. Don't you take one step closer. Orpheus warned. However, the pilot inside didn't seem to be concerned with any of them at the moment. Aikido, I can't believe you're still alive. Not only a European soldier, you're even sided with the Black Knights and the Autobots. Aikido felt a chill run down his spine as he recognized the voice. It can't be. Just as Sarah began to stirk awake, she looked up to the Vercingetorix as the cockpit opened and the pilot stood up for all to see him. It's good to see you again, he said to Aikido as he himself stepped out of the Alexander cockpit. Little brother. Brother. Lelouch, Rai, Leila, and Orpheus all exclaimed. Sarah looked up toward him and saw the exact same face and eyes as the teenage boy she saw in the vision. No doubt, it's him. One by one, Zero, Leila, Rai, and Orpheus all stood up from their nightmare cockpits as well, and it only seemed then Shin noticed them. Oh my, the infamous Zero. Shin chuckled. Fate seems to have a strange sense of humor, Who are you? Zero questioned. I am Shin Hyuga Shang, the Grand Master to the Order of Michael, and as you've now just learned, the older brother to dear Aikido. He introduced himself. But I sense there is something else, something that we have in common. What are you talking about? Orpheus questioned. Shin got a good look at each of them before he chuckled. I can sense it, we all share the same gift, don't we? A Geass sigil manifested in his left eye, causing everyone to gasp as Lelouch, Rai, Orpheus, and even Leila felt their own respective Geass activate on instinct. You seriously have a Geass? Rai exclaimed. Ah, so that's what it's called. Geass, I had no idea. Shin said. Just as I had no idea there were others like me out there. This is truly fascinating, I'd love to learn more. And I'm sure we'll learn more about you as well. An energon blaster was primed behind him as Shin turned around to face the glaring Ultra Magnus, who aimed his weapon directly at him. We'll learn all we can as we interrogate you. Shin looked around to see he was completely surrounded on all sides. The Gurren, Lancelot, Florence, Tristian Divider, and even Jetfire hovered in the air. RC, Smokescreen, Prowl, and Sideswipe stood on the rooftops, while Bumblebee, Grindcore, and Bulkhead were on the streets. Likewise, Ryo, Ayano, and Yukia arrived in their Alexanders as well. Even Alita one stepped forward, closer toward Aikido, feeling a sense to protect him as she saw the look of clear terror on his face. Oddly though, Shin didn't look the least bit intimidated. Commander Magnus. He greeted casually. Shin Hyuga Shang, your forces have been defeated. Ultra Magnus told him. Anyone who survived has now left, and you're surrounded on all sides. Now would be an ideal time to surrender. Yes, one would think. Shin said. But I'm afraid that time is not now. He accessed his communication device. I request a ground bridge. A portal suddenly opened underneath him as his nightmare fell in, taking him with it. Farewell for now, Akito. I look forward to continuing our reunion. He said before the portal closed. Right as it did, another portal opened up underneath Ashley's crippled nightmare, taking him as well as the deceased Joanne away. Damn it, Colin muttered. Who the heck was that creep? Sideswipe questioned as everyone regrouped. Akito's brother, believe it or not. Orpheus commented. Brother. Most of them exclaimed. Lelouch sighed, no doubt this was going to complicate things, but they had to stay focused on the mission. Jetfire, what's the status of the defensive line? It's been brought down. The Arielbot reported. EU forces are advancing as we speak. Good. Alita nodded. We'll regroup with them as instructed. Once we settle down, we can get some rest. Good work everyone. Despite the praise from one of their leaders, as well as the obvious success of their mission, none of them felt like celebrating. What happened today was an absolute fiasco, both physically and emotionally. But with nothing else to do, most of the Autobots all transformed as the nightmares rolled away. Even Akito, acting like a machine, got back into his Alexander, and joined everyone else. The only ones left in the square appeared to be Ultra Magnus and Zero as he stepped down from his Shinkiro to help Sarah on her feet. Are you alright? He asked with concern. I'll be fine. Lelouch. Magnus got his attention. What happened today? Akito and the others acted nothing short of rabid and wild. While you were able to find a means for it to work in our favor, these actions are unacceptable. They put themselves and others in grave danger. It wasn't their fault, Sarah said. Akito was under the effects of a Geass, and it somehow transferred to Ryo and the others. Probably through the Alexander's neural link, which is why the rest of us weren't affected. I'm guessing Shin was the one responsible. Lelouch assumed as he took off his mask. Yes, it was definitely him. Sarah confirmed. I don't know the details, or who even gave him that Geass, it certainly wasn't me. But Shin used his Geass on Akito when he was only a child, probably 2 or 3 years old. How do you know this? Magnus asked. When I made contact, I saw what happened through Akito's memories. Sarah explained. I couldn't get a clear enough picture to know what exactly happened, but I do know that it was Shin who used his Geass on Akito. And, there was something else, something darker, Shin's Geass it reminds me too much of Megatron's Dark Geass. That got both their attention. Are you sure? Lelouch asked with an urgent expression. It's not as potent, but it feels as twisted. Sarah replied. I don't think it was a power from VV either. Is there anybody else like you? Ultra Magnus questioned. Anyone who can bestow a Geass to others. So far as I know, there isn't. Sarah replied. This is very disturbing. Lelouch wasn't quite sure what to think of this. Ultra Magnus then got back on point. I acknowledge that this was against their will, but this still leaves the clear risk of Akito and possibly the others going on a similar rampage again. We cannot allow that. It won't happen, Sarah said. I'll try and purge the effect of the Geass from Akito's mind, but if I can't do that, I will try to teach him and the others how to control that power, similar to Suzaku. They won't be liabilities, I'll see to it. Very well. Ultra Magnus seemed to accept it. However, this also means you are responsible for anything else that may happen. I understand completely. Sarah nodded. Come on, let's go. Lelouch said as they prepared to leave. Even though this was indeed a victory and can help them get a better relationship with the EU, which will most certainly help them in the long run. There were a great many things to be concerned about. Maribel and the Glindonites were here. Akito's condition, and how it seems capable of spreading to others was a serious concern. But the most disturbing thing to learn today was this Shin Hyuga Shang person also has a Geass that was similar to Megatron's, and it wasn't given to him by either Sarah or VV. Needless to say, things were going to get complicated from this point forward. However, none of them seemed to notice that there was a certain Decepticon who had heard the entire conversation. Steeljaw had listened to every word that was spoken and couldn't help but smirk. So much potential has just made itself known, so much for him to twist in his favor. With a small chuckle, he transformed into his vehicle mode and rode off. And this at the end of Season 2 Part 4 of this What If. Hope you guys like it. Do not forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.